Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Chapter 1. One Fu Iuki. Long time ago, Magecraft and science were both fields of study. However, as the ages passed, the mysteries that once existed on this planet began to fade, and the presence of Magecraft was gradually forgotten by humanity. By today, Magecraft has become nothing more than a word belonging to fantasy. The few families that still possess complete magical traditions are, without exception, ancient families with long-standing lineages. Clearly, Magecraft has thoroughly retreated from human society. In the hidden side, these people call themselves Magus. Winter, 1990. Fuiuki City, Hyogo Prefecture, Japan. On this day, an unfortunate soul from another world was sent here by an interdimensional human trafficking organization using a truck as its tool, on a bright and sunny day. As a young man from the 21st century, he was utterly speechless. He was walking on a pedestrian crossing, strictly following traffic rules. Although he heard a loud rumbling in his ears, before he could react, a truck sent him straight to another world. When Roy opened his eyes, what was once a warm summer day had turned into a freezing winter in an instant. He was completely dumbfounded. People bustled past him, and he stood among them, bewildered and unsure. Surrounded by a strange city, hearing a language he couldn't understand, the more he grasped his situation, the more absurd it felt. But after wandering the streets of a foreign world for a few weeks, no matter how much he didn't want to accept it, he had no choice but to face reality. At first, he wondered if he had some kind of cheat ability or system to help him start a new life in this world. But he soon realized he was overthinking it. Those weeks of hardship made him bow down to the cruel reality. Sleeping on the streets, scavenging for trash, and even fighting homeless people for a clean park bench. He lived this vagrant life for quite some time, but fortunately, he didn't fall into despair. No matter how tough the trials, he always sought a way to break free. Even in ruin, he refused to kneel. That was the principle he upheld. Knock. 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 On the outskirts of Fuiuki City, a gentle knock echoed on the wooden gate of a small courtyard with a sign that read Fujimura Household. Taiga, are you home? Coming. With the lively voice of a cheerful girl, the wooden door was pushed open from the inside. As the door opened, 2 people met. Inside stood a young woman with brown hair tied in a ponytail, dressed in sportswear, radiating energy. A Yakuza princess. Outside stood a young man with short black hair, dressed in a black long coat, smiling as he greeted her. Long time no see, Taiga. What? Oh, it's you, Roy. What brings you here so late? Are those Yamaguchi-gumi guys causing trouble again? Do you need me to help you take them down? Taiga smiled brightly when she saw him, raising her fists excitedly as she spoke. It was clear she was in a great mood. Starting the new year full of energy, just like this. Please, spare me. If I brought you to a gang fight, the old man would lose it. In response, Roy merely smiled, ruffled her hair, and teased, also, you shouldn't always be fighting and causing trouble. If the boss finds out, he'll put you under house arrest again. Come on, don't keep using my grandfather to pressure me. But it's okay, he wouldn't really punish me. Taiga confidently patted her chest. And besides, I'm pretty strong. Those idiots from the Yamaguchi-gumi are no match for me. I'll take them all down with you. Seeing the girl's confident demeanor, Roy smiled but didn't say much. Instead, he handed her a prepared gift. What's this? It's a New Year's gift for you, and I'm passing a message to the boss on the way. A message for my grandfather? Exactly. He asked me to tell you that the Fujimura group will be very busy for a while. You need to behave while you're home alone and not run around. Also, school starts again after New Year, so don't forget your winter vacation homework. Receiving the package and feeling its familiar weight and shape, Taiga's expression suddenly stiffened, deflating like a punctured ball, losing all her earlier energy. Ugh. The so-called New Year's gift turned out to be winter vacation homework. This New Year's gift was truly too heavy. You can celebrate the new year, But you also have to complete your homework. Anyway, good luck, girl. A bright future is waiting for you." Seeing the amusing grimace on the girl's face, Roy couldn't help but feel cheerful. He ruffled her hair again and decided not to tease her any longer. He then took out a relatively thick white envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. "Happy New Year. Here's a gift for you." Since being picked up by the Fujimura Group a few years ago, he had saved a little over time. Although he wasn't wealthy, giving a small amount of money to a child wasn't a problem. While it was unlikely that the Fujimura princess lacked money, as her senpai, he felt it was important to give her this gesture. "Thank you so much, Roy." Taiga smiled brightly as she tucked the money into her pocket. Regardless of the child, receiving money always brings joy. She didn't care much about the money itself, she simply liked the idea of gift. After a burst of laughter and cheer, the New Year visit came to an end. Roy didn't linger, declining Taiga's invitation to come inside and left instead. Walking on the empty street, watching the snowflakes fall, Roy couldn't help but start reminiscing about his years. He had been in this world for almost 3 years, and those 3 years had been rich and colorful. Initially, he fully learned Japanese during his life as a vagrant, leveraging his existing knowledge. After that, he earned some money by collecting scrap and started a small vendor business. Although he often had to evade the city management and the Yakuza for operating without a license and not being able to pay protection fees, he had considered taking the path of a copycat writer. However, in 1994, whether or not the future would succeed here was one thing, he only knew fragments of the content from the books. His knowledge was far from enough to be a successful copycat writer, so that path was naturally unfeasible. But with his honest sales and good behavior, he managed to establish himself in the small streets over the course of more than 6 months. Later, when the Fujimura Group began recruiting, he finally had a proper job. Although being part of the Yakuza didn't exactly qualify as a normal profession, given his status as an illegal resident, there was likely no legitimate job that would accept him. His daily routine then transitioned from selling goods and collecting scraps to collecting protection fees on the street every day, occasionally even engaging in skirmishes with the Yamaguchi-gumi, while also avoiding the police. Life was plain but fulfilling. At least he didn't have to wander like a stray dog, scavenging for food. He had found a place to settle and rely on in this world. With his relatively advanced ideas and a treasured attitude toward his hard-earned job, he always maintained his motivation. Even with challenging tasks, he managed to accomplish them impressively, which made him valued in the Fujimura Group. Recently, due to his previous suggestions, the boss felt that the Fujimura Group should indeed adapt to the changing times, and began moving toward legitimate business, investing in many electronic industries. Even the demeanor of the group members had become much more restrained. The gradual shift from black to white was proceeding steadily, and he thought this calm life would last a long time. However, regrettably, this ordinary life was shattered just a few days ago. Carrying the dinner he bought at a discount supermarket, Roy rode his bike back to his house. This spacious house was a reward from the old man for his contributions to the Fujimura Group when he became a core member. One day, the head of the Fujimura Group learned that Roy was still living in a cramped single apartment, so he said, "A man should have a home. Don't think that because you're young now, you won't need a place to settle down in the future, whether you get married or retire." He happened to have an old house near the eastern outer ring, which was originally used as a rest station when the organization was starting up. Since it was no longer needed, he generously gifted it to him. With a deep sigh, as he habitually took out his keys to open the door automatically swung open, revealing a magnetic male voice from inside. "Welcome back, Master." "Yeah, I'm back, Count." Responding lightly, Roy took off his shoes and walked inside. Seated in the room was a cold yet handsome figure exuding an air of elegance. Just his indifferent demeanor could save a significant amount on air conditioning costs, making it feel chilly just to be in front of him. In response to this man's greeting, Roy leisurely replied, "Good evening, Count. Have you finished reading those books I bought for you?" Regarding this man who had appeared, Roy dared not offend him in the slightest. Although he wasn't as hard to get along with as imagined, he always maintained a sense of caution toward his servant. Despite being his master now, he was very aware of his own shortcomings. He wasn't like Fujimaru Ritsuka, who possessed an almost transcendent charm. He was just a third-rate master without even activated magic circuits. What right did he have to command these heroes? Thus, he kept his posture very humble. Moreover, he found it somewhat unexpected to summon this particular servant. If he had a good temper, he was genuinely an anti-hero, with a chaotic evil alignment, perfectly described as unpredictable. Yet, in a certain sense, he was surprisingly easy to get along with. At least during this time, he hadn't caused any trouble for Roy. He simply enjoyed going out alone and reading at home. "I no longer need them. Most of the books I'm interested in have already been read." The Count shook his head, glanced at Roy, and deliberately pushed over a cup of coffee that he had prepared in advance, his movements still radiating elegance. "Drink up, master. Being exposed to the cold wind for so long can easily make you sick." Another cup of coffee. Seeing the steaming black coffee, Roy couldn't help but swallow. "What's wrong?" "It's not some fancy coffee, but the taste is decent enough." "Count, your coffee is delicious, but I really struggle with the bitter taste." Roy chuckled bitterly but had no intention of refusing the Count's kind gesture. He picked up the coffee offered by the Count, preparing to drink. "Is that so?" The Count, who had somehow moved to his side, blocked the cup with his hand and pulled out a sugar cube from his pocket, saying, "Pure coffee is indeed bitter. If you're not used to it, just add a bit of sugar before drinking." Looking at the sugar cube offered, Roy felt somewhat surprised. If they hadn't spent so much time together, he would find it hard to imagine this indifferent king of the cavern having such a gentle side. He secretly glanced up at the Count. "Isn't his quite gentle?" "What's wrong? Do I have something on my face?" Noticing Roy staring at him, the Count furrowed his brow slightly. "No, nothing." Roy shook his head and continued to savor the coffee. The green servant before him was named Edmond Dantes, based on the protagonist from the Count of Monte Cristo. He was the world's most famous Avenger, the King of the Cavern, and was summoned by Roy a few months ago. However, rather than saying Roy summoned him, it would be more accurate to say that Dantes summoned himself, with Roy merely being the one who happened to be chosen as his master. That day, he had merely been resting at home as usual when he suddenly found 3 strange red marks appearing on the back of his hand. The glowing circle that rose in his bedroom startled him, and then he heard "Cra ha 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 ha." A bold and demonic laugh. Then the circle exploded, and what he saw was, "It was you who called me, young man, the embodiment of revenge." "It is. My pitch-black resentment, servant avenger at your service." At the moment of the summoning, Roy clearly saw his appearance. That red scarf, the dark green cloak, like a tangible hatred, along with that bright green hat and his raucous, devilish laughter. Wasn't this the Count? The Count of Monte Cristo, the King of the Cavern, Edmond Dantes. But the problem was, where on earth did he come from? Roy didn't call for him at all. He had no magic circuits, nor had he drawn a summoning circle. How could a servant be summoned by him, and why would a class like Avenger be summoned? What the hell is going on? In 1994, in Fuyuki City, servant summoning. For someone like him, an old hand at this, it was obvious without even thinking about what was about to happen. The Fourth Holy Grail War. The Magus were going to cause trouble in Fuyuki. Having anticipated this, he didn't pay it much mind. After all, he was just a mortal, and whatever happened on the mysterious side had nothing to do with him. He had no intention of getting involved. After all, being a low-level fighter in such a war, he wouldn't even know how he died. Avoiding it altogether was the best choice. However, as that light circle rose from the ground, followed by the arrogant demonic laughter, it completely numbed Roy, who had originally been prepared to move to a distant city this year. Seeing the 3 glaring red marks appear on the back of his hand, he felt that he had already been bound to this servant before him. He knew that the house insurance he had bought early and the relocation plans he had prepared were all in vain. Looking at the Count's cocky and arrogant face, and the already messy room, he could only think, what a disaster. Chapter 2, To the Servant and the Master. Happy New Year, Count. While cooking dinner, Roy didn't forget to send his servant a greeting, even though the Count didn't celebrate the New Year at all. "Happy New Year, Master." "Thank you." Walk out of the kitchen, Roy served the dishes he had just prepared. Upon seeing the steak and other France-style dishes on the table, the Count frowned slightly. Roy then pushed the food toward him and said, "Come and try it. I specifically learned a few France dishes, but they might not taste very good." "The taste, you say?" The King of the Cavern nodded, glancing at the dishes before him. Then, seeing Roy's expectant gaze, he skillfully picked up the knife and fork Roy had prepared and took a small bite, nodding slightly. "Not tasty?" Roy felt a bit nervous. This was his first time making France food. Although he had strictly followed the recipe, he still felt uncertain. "Indeed, it's quite terrible." He hadn't controlled the cooking time well, the beef was of inferior quality, and he didn't have all the necessary seasonings. Such food might not even be considered France cuisine. I'm sorry, but this was the only beef available at the supermarket." However, the Count set down his knife and fork, a slight smile curving at the corners of his mouth. In that moment, Roy felt he saw a trace of nostalgia in the Count's smile. This somewhat terrible yet very familiar taste. It really reminded him of her. "But I like it." "Like it? Is that so?" "As long as you like it." Seeing that the Count liked it, Roy felt a bit relieved, and his tense emotions finally eased. A hint of relaxation appeared in his eyes, all of which was clearly noticed by the King of the Cavern. Initially, The king of the cavern found it hard to understand why his master could trust him so completely. From the very beginning, as he descended here in the identity of an avenger, the anti-hero king of the cavern naturally had little respect for his master, especially since this master was an ordinary person who couldn't even supply basic magical energy. As a servant, he naturally held a grudge against him and didn't show him any good face, let alone obey his commands. He certainly didn't qualify as his accomplice. This led to the king of the cavern often wandering alone, and it wasn't uncommon for him to be absent for several days. If it weren't for the command seals still on the back of Roy's hand, he might have suspected that the king had died outside. Although the Holy Grail War hadn't begun, the preparations for it had already started. Such rebellious behavior was considered a taboo in the Holy Grail War. If it were any other master, they would have exploded in anger at the king of the cavern actions long ago. The king of the cavern thought his master would use the command seals to restrict his behavior and was prepared for the betrayal of his master. However, Roy not only didn't do that but even encouraged the king of the cavern to go out more, to see the development of the world and experience what freedom was like. If he encountered trouble, he could always contact Roy and use the command seals whenever needed. Roy wouldn't pry into the rest of the matters. Thus, this master and servant had coexisted in a very peculiar manner for a long time. To put it simply, they each did their own thing. Roy wore gloves to cover his command seals and continued his daily life of going out early and returning late, while the king of the cavern roamed freely, as long as he checked in periodically to report his safety. Roy wouldn't impose any restrictions on him, and their interaction was as if nothing had ever happened, life continuing as normal. This bizarre mode of interaction was unprecedented in any Holy Grail War. What master would be so lenient with their servant? Or rather, this was hardly treating him like a servant or a familiar. Their relationship felt more like friends. Until one day when he returned, the king of the cavern finally couldn't help but ask him why. Such behavior puzzled him. It could have been just an accident or some kind of arrangement, but the fact that he was summoned in the Holy Grail War meant he had his own wish. Yet now, he was being completely granted freedom, not caring at all about the Holy Grail War. This contradictory behavior made him curious. One day, he openly asked his master this question. Upon hearing it, Roy merely smiled and replied, "As an avenger summoned to this world, you know that I did not use the relics to summon you, yet you came from the throne of heroes and bonded with me. Doesn't that mean you are willing to reach an agreement with me? So I trust you, no matter what kind of missions or purposes you carry with you this time. I am willing to believe in you, even if you are not willing to believe in me." He had no talents and didn't even possess a magic circuit. Such a weak individual had no qualifications to regard himself as a master. "I have no talents and don't know how to be a competent master. I'm not even a basic magus, I'm more of a burden to you. It's only natural that you would be dissatisfied with me, Avenger. If doing this makes Avenger happy, then I will choose to do so. Don't mind me, just do what you enjoy. We are merely partners, neither of us is the other's master." For a count like him, who was quick to settle scores, deceit and scheming would only invite dissatisfaction and rebellion. Being open and treating each other equally was the best choice. Hearing Roy's words, the king of the cavern was momentarily stunned. He studied Roy with his golden eyes for a long time before he laughed, a very relaxed laugh. "Freedom, huh? Ha ha ha, you really are an interesting fellow who doesn't even qualify as a magus. Perhaps that's why you can be like this. But freedom. For an avenger, such a luxurious word as freedom has long been abandoned. Listen carefully, what appears before you is not the redeemed Edmond Dantes, but a vengeful spirit known as the King of the Cavern. Thus, the very essence of my being consists of endless grudges, curses, and lethal, poisonous flames. If you wish to touch me, you must be prepared. Do you truly have the courage to stand with a devil, master?" The scorching black flames, carrying ominous grudges and curses, emitted a terrifying heat that made one instinctively retreat. The king of the cavern looked coldly at his master through the blazing fire, yet Roy didn't mind these things. He shook his head and replied, "Whether you are Edmond Dantes or the king of the cavern, Avenger is still Avenger. That is enough for me. If you need it, I can contribute my strength at any time. After all, we are partners. Or at least, we should be. Partners, huh?" The king of the cavern scoffed. "Don't talk nonsense. I haven't recognized you as my partner yet. Be careful, partnering with a vengeful spirit like me might suddenly lead to your death. It's fine, actually, I quite like the king of the cavern." "Like me? What kind of foolish thing are you saying? Liking a vengeful spirit like me isn't a joke that's funny at all. No, it's true. Though the king of the cavern may be a bit cold, I can see that you are not a bad person, you just aren't good at expressing yourself." Roy shook his head. I can tell that the king of the cavern used to be a very gentle person. After a long silence, he slowly spoke. What exactly is your deal? With this attitude, you still want to stay by my side? It's just like her. No, she is ultimately her, you are not the same. After this heart-to-heart, the relationship between the initially estranged master and servant grew closer, and the king of the cavern murderous intent toward his master completely vanished over time. In their interactions, he felt quite satisfied with this master compared to the evil spirits in the prison tower. Roy was quite good. For such a master, he didn't mind helping out a bit. Then, during a few intense conflicts, several troublemaking punks were swiftly taken down by some unknown bizarre attack, rendered unconscious until they were taken into custody, continuously shouting about evil spirits. Thanks to those contributions, Roy's status in the Fujimura group significantly improved, and he was promoted from an external member to a central figure in the organization. Though Roy would complain later about the king of the cavern wasting magical energy and possibly attracting those Magus. In any case, through continuous interaction, the mutual understanding between the master and servant deepened. Just like in a casual story, two people with opposing personalities gradually formed a light friendship in their daily interactions. He had known from the very beginning that the Count was not a bad person, on the contrary, he was quite delicate. For the master he acknowledged, he would reciprocate without reservation. Of course, neither side acknowledged this. This was also a form of unspoken understanding between them. Count, I have something to discuss tomorrow, so I'll head to bed now. Please help me clean up the dishes. Is a proud heroic spirit really meant for this? The Count gave him a meaningful glance, nodded, and couldn't help but ask, what are you going to discuss? Do you need me to accompany you? Don't worry, it's nothing major. I want to resign from this job. The upcoming battles will be dangerous, and I don't want to involve them or make them worry. I see. You want to wash your hands of this? I guess so, I can't continue down this path anymore. Have you considered your life after leaving the organization, once the Holy Grail War is over? The Count squinted slightly while picking up the coffee on the table, taking a sip and savoring it. Master, it's only natural to feel uneasy about leaving your old life behind. There's no denying that feeling does exist. Thank you for worrying about me, Count, but I should be fine. I've saved up quite a bit over the years, enough to support myself for a long time. The Fujimura group has also established good relations with the police. As long as we don't stir up major trouble and gradually transition toward a legitimate path, there shouldn't be any issues. I see. Since you're aware of that, I won't say much more. Get some good rest. Good night, Master. The Count lightly tapped the table, picked up the dishes, and gently closed the door as he left the room. Good night. Chapter 3, Fujimura near Fuiuki Park, there was a bar that Roy often frequented. Beneath its modest sign was a typical entrance. The bar's decor was simple, and the exterior didn't have anything particularly attractive to draw customers. The lighting inside was dim, and the windows were dark, with a few holes here and there. The only redeeming feature was the decent milk and the affordable, budget-friendly drinks. Although the environment drove away quite a few customers, the bar remained in business, thanks to its low prices. Roy's initial reason for coming here had been those cheap but tasty drinks. The environment wasn't a factor in his decision. Roy pushed open the bar's door. The familiar scent and dim lighting filled his senses, as distinctive as ever. The bartender at the counter greeted him. After all, Roy had become a regular. However, this time he didn't sit at the counter to order. Nodding in acknowledgement, he walked into an open private booth and found a seat. Happy New Year, boss. Happy New Year, young man. The dim lights flickered. An elderly man sat across from him. Want something to drink? The sake here is pretty good. Care to join this old man for a cup? You're still as lively as ever, boss. Ha ha ha, you sure know how to joke, young man. I've already got one foot in the grave. There's nothing lively about me anymore. The elderly man, dressed in a black kimono, smiled and personally poured a cup of sake, pushing it toward Roy, signaling for him to drink together. Seeing the elderly man teasing him, Roy smiled and shook his head in return. Your health is unbelievable. Just a few months ago, you led your men at the Fuiuki docks, wiping out other groups in one fell swoop. When the police showed up, you still had the energy to get everyone out of there. A ruthless man like you claiming to be old? That's hard to believe. He couldn't help but wonder how such a mafia boss ended up raising someone as lively as Taiga. After that, the old man drank his sake, and Roy followed suit, raising his cup and drinking. After a cup, the elderly man rested one arm on the table, tapping it lightly with his fingers before asking, Roy, how have you been lately? Not too bad, thanks to your care. Things have been going all right for me. At least I'm not sleeping on the streets anymore. Is that so? Gold shines wherever it is, and the same goes for capable people. You can't credit me for your success. Everything you have now is because you earned it. You flatter me, boss. After a bit of small talk, the large private booth felt a bit empty with just the two of them inside. It was this emptiness that gave Roy an odd sense of unease. His gaze occasionally darted to the blind spots of his field of vision. There's no one around, only two regular men guarding the entrance. Count? Hearing the voice in his ear, Roy paused for a moment before realizing what it was. Feeling reassured, he grew more confident. Although he trusted Fujimura's character, knowing the Count had his back made him feel even more at ease. He looked curiously at the elderly man in front of him. The application he had submitted a few months ago shouldn't have been too much trouble for him, so was it really necessary to ask for a face-to-face meeting? Although Roy had received a lot of care from the Fujimura group, he had more than repaid that kindness with his contributions over time. They had no reason to stop him from leaving. He had come alone, trusting Fujimura's character, not wanting to trouble the Count. But as the saying goes, you can know someone's face but not their heart. If things took a turn in the wrong direction, then there would be no other choice. Are you feeling tense, young man? You're joking. Anyone would feel nervous being alone with boss. What worries me is whether I've done something wrong that has upset you. Ha ha ha, you're quite straightforward, young man. Fujimura laughed, waving his hand dismissively. Don't worry. It's just the two of us here. I'm not the type to be rigid, so feel free to speak your mind. I'd like to hear what you truly think. Well, since you put it that way, I won't hold back. I want to ask. Did you agree to that matter? You mean your resignation letter? Hey, I thought someone like you, who acts decisively, would simply toss the letter and leave. It surprised me that you followed the proper procedure and submitted a formal application. You flatter me, boss. Roy scratched his head awkwardly. I had to be clear on such an important matter. After all this time together, I see myself as a bit of a mentor to you. I understand your nature. But why? You know that your position in the Fujimura group isn't low, and you've never done anything illegal. I don't understand why you're so eager to leave. Is the reason that important? It should be my personal freedom. It's important. Fujimura nodded. Someone with your skills is exactly the fresh blood the Fujimura group needs to grow. If you can't give me a good reason, I won't let you go so easily. Is the group not treating you well? I had planned to train you for a few more years due to your inexperience before letting you take over as the Wakagashira of our Tokyo branch. If you're in a hurry, we could even one that's not the reason, boss. Roy shook his head, rejecting the old man's offer. He explained, the group has treated me well, and I'm deeply grateful. Without your help, I might still be homeless, and who knows, maybe starving on the streets. So I will always remember the kindness Fujimura group showed me. Then why are you leaving? The old man took a drag from his cigarette, giving Roy a deep look. Sorry, this is a personal reason, and it has nothing to do with the group. Boss, I have to leave for reasons that are not only for my own good but for the good of the Fujimura group as well. Please, trust me one more time. Fujimura gazed at Roy intently, seeing the seriousness and resolve in his eyes, along with a hint of struggle. Fine, fine. After a long silence, the old man finally shook his head and slowly spoke. If you don't want to say, I won't force you. With that, he retrieved the resignation letter from under the table and pushed it in front of Roy. This is? Humphrey, it's your resignation. Although we haven't known each other for long, I understand you well. You're young but as stubborn as I was back in the day. If you don't want to talk about it, then no matter how much I press, you won't say a word. You might even make up a reason just to placate me. Roy scratched his head awkwardly but didn't deny it. Humphrey, since you don't want to say, I'll let you be. I understand your nature. You have your reasons for doing things, and I trust that you've thought this through. Boss, Don't interrupt me just yet, let this old man ramble a little longer. The old man raised his hand, cutting him off, and continued speaking. I can guess that you've probably gotten yourself into some big trouble. Trouble so large that even the Fujimura group can't handle it. You don't want to drag us down, which is why you've decided to leave. While I'd love to help you, if this is your choice, I'll respect it. But even though you're leaving the Fujimura group, don't forget that you were once one of us. We're family. No matter what trouble you face, never forget us. Even if the power of the Fujimura group isn't enough, we will still do everything we can to help you, young man. Boss, thank you. A soft laugh escaped Roy's lips, his heart swelling with unspeakable emotion. Slowly, he stood up and gave the elderly man before him a deep bow, expressing his gratitude for all the years of care and understanding. Seeing this, the old man simply smiled gently, shook his head slowly, and waved his hand dismissively. Go on, kid. Don't linger here any longer. Go do what you want to do. Don't worry about us old folks. Just don't forget about the Fujimura group, And be sure to come home often. In a few years, I'm still counting on you to keep tutoring Taiga. Thank you. Roy stood and gave the old man a deep bow once more, full of gratitude. Boss, there's actually one more thing I'd like to ask of you. What is it? In a few months, I'd like to ask you to take the Fujimura group out of Fuiuki City for a while. Leave for about a week, just treat it like a vacation. Can you do that? Leave Fuiuki City? Upon hearing this, the old man fell silent for a moment. He looked up, meeting Roy's serious gaze, and slowly nodded. I understand. I'll think about it. Thank you. Goodbye. With that, Roy turned and left. Chapter 4, Prison Tower. Have you ever envied others? Envied others' talents, gifts, or status? Have you ever felt regret because of abilities you lack? Or experienced loss due to your own mistakes, missing out on wealth and opportunities? Who is this? In a daze, the man's familiar voice echoed in his ears. Jealousy, envy, and the tears of regret born from coveting others' opportunities. The world has never been bright, and fate has never been fair. How extravagant is the experience of so-called equality? The voice had a deep, penetrating tone, resounding in Roy's ears, refusing to fade. No need to answer. The answer in your heart has yet to be revealed. Don't look away, for everyone possesses it, and no one can escape. Envy for others, sighing at your own fate and its injustices, these give birth to original sins, and the tears of regret have already flowed from the corners of your eyes. In his deep sleep, Roy heard a man's voice babbling in his ears. His sleep was restless, and after several frustrated turns, he slowly opened his eyes. As he lifted his head, he realized he was staring at a dark fortress. The prison tower. Fully awake, Roy began to recall the voice. He now recognized it. Except for the absence of the familiar demonic laugh, the tone was identical to that of the Count. The only reason he hadn't recognized it earlier was due to his sleepy state, but now fully alert, he pieced it all together. Unbelievable, the prison tower event had been recreated. He had somehow ended up in the same situation as Fujimaru Ritsuka, pulled into the Count's prison tower event while dreaming. Already awake? You've surprised me. It seems you have an unexpectedly good affinity with this prison tower, no wonder you were able to summon me. Count? That's right, it's me, the man you call the Count of Monte Cristo, the true ghost of vengeance, Edmond Dantes. Welcome to this island of despair for sinners, the prison tower, young man. In this tower lies the boundary of grace and hatred. Once you enter, regardless of whether you are a grave sinner or an innocent soul, every type of spirit will be imprisoned here. And of course, you are no exception. From the shadows emerged a silver-haired man in a green cloak, stepping out from a dark corner as he spoke. This is the first gate, home to the sin of envy. Right now, you are trapped here, sinking into the mire with no escape. All your pain gathers here. Sorrow, anger, grief. The voices of despair never cease. This is a living hell on earth from which no one can escape. Do you understand? The cold, eerie prison was filled with writhing worms and rats crawling on the floor, mixed with the distant screams of evil spirits and lost souls. The atmosphere was terrifying. Contrary to the Count's expectations, Roy did not cry out in despair or panic. Seeing how seriously the Count was acting, he actually felt like laughing. He ignored the Count, who was still theatrically performing, and instead calmly reached into his pocket, pulling out a cigarette and lighting it for a deep drag. Faced with such a situation, he chose to calm down by smoking. Have you given up? Succumbed to despair? In this hell, death and despair intertwine. Any glimmer of hope will be swallowed whole. Sinners of this world will fall here, eternally tormented. Evil spirits, the dead, despair. No beauty exists here. But you are different. You hold a chance for salvation, you stop. Roy extinguished his cigarette, glanced back at the Count, and said, spare me all this convoluted backstory. Just tell me, why did you bring me here? That's enough. Imprison you here? Me? Ha ha, what a funny joke, cry ha ha ha. That sudden burst of laughter confirmed it for Roy. He had not been mistaken. This was indeed the infamous man with the demonic laugh that he had summoned. You came here on your own. This fortress isn't as easy to enter as you think. I'm not sure how you became linked to me, but even your soul has been drawn into this hell. All of this was your own choice. Intruder, what is it that you seek? So he doesn't have any memory? Or maybe these two Counts aren't the same. Although the Count's long-winded speech hadn't clarified Roy's situation, it did make him realize something else. Rubbing the back of his hand where the command seals had vanished, Roy now had a clearer idea of what had happened. It was likely the same situation as Fujimaru Ritsuka's. Staring at the vengeful ghost in front of him, wearing a mocking smile, Roy continued, no need to tell me all that. Just let me know where the enemies are. Huh? The Count paused for a moment, then burst into laughter, applauding Roy. Is that so? Even in the depths of hell, you're not panicking but instead clearly assessing the situation and thinking of a way out? I must say, I'm impressed with you. As I mentioned before, this is the Isle of Despair, the prison tower. It is both the far shore of revenge and the breeding ground of sin. Your enemies have already arrived, drawn by the scent of sin. Sin. Creak. With the sound of the heavy iron door of the dungeon being pushed open, something was released. At the same time, the howls of demons echoed from a distance. The Count sat back in his chair, pointing towards the demons drawn by the scent, and said, "Why not start with them? In this prison tower, only the wandering souls of despair linger. And this fresh, living body of yours is naturally their first choice. Now they've found you. But don't panic. They're just dead spirits, they lack the ability to possess your soul. They envy all living things. Especially you. They're all coming for you, so what will you do?" The Count's tone was filled with madness, performing as if he were in an opera, indulging in a frenzied show. Watching the numerous demons rushing towards him and hearing their screeching cries, Roy felt no fear. The Count's smile remained as he stood up, clapping his hands as if concluding a performance, then took a step forward, shielding Roy. "You're lucky or maybe unlucky to have gotten involved with me and been dragged into the prison tower. But in this hell, you've met me, the ghost of vengeance. Now, do you need help? I am the vengeful spirit born from despair, filled with hatred and curses, carrying the world's most wicked flames. You can call me Avenger. Of course, Count of Monte Cristo." Roy nodded slightly, extending his hand. The young man's smile caused the Count to be momentarily distracted, but before he realized it, his hand had already clasped Roy's, and a red glow slowly appeared on the back of Roy's hand. The 3 crimson command spells reappeared. At that moment, another contract was established. "It seems you understand the situation here, my new master. More or less. If I want to leave, I just need to fight my way through here, right?" Roy nodded, not denying the Count's words. As a master who had gone through the prison tower event before, he was naturally familiar with the process. In short, it was about fighting through different trials, defeating the enemies under the Count's guidance, and only the final victor could escape. A simple and clear understanding. But you're right. For the prisoners here, only by passing all the trials can their souls be liberated. On the other hand, if they die, their souls will truly perish. Roar pitch black, poisonous flames shot out along their paths with terrifying speed, instantly piercing the heads of several spirits at the front. Without a chance to scream, they turned to ash in the cursed flames. After a fierce battle, countless spirits were reduced to ashes by the flames. These fragile souls stood no chance before the terrifying fire. In the end, only Roy and the Count remained, standing amidst the ashes in the dark, decayed prison, gazing ahead with indifference. They were weak opponents. "Your sin of envy is much lighter than I expected. What an upright man you are, Master. But, can you keep fighting like this? Are you holding up, Master?" The floor was covered with scattered ashes, and the Count glanced at the exhausted and disheveled Roy with some concern. Although the enemies weren't strong, facing such a large army of spirits made it difficult even for him to protect his master completely. Not to mention, he had deliberately let 1 or 2 weaker spirits through. But from the start of the battle until now, even though Roy had been chased so miserably by the spirits, even though his life was in danger, he never once interrupted the Count's fight or dragged him down. A master like that was truly rare. No wonder they had formed a bond. No, someone like him could probably get along well with any servant. The Count quickly snapped out of his thoughts, a smile forming at the corner of his mouth. Who would have thought, my master turned out to be unexpectedly remarkable. Chapter 5, 5 Chance. Well done, Master. Your performance surprised me a bit. I didn't expect an ordinary person to hold out this long. After quickly dispatching the large enemy force, the Count turned around and saw the 2 skeleton soldiers lying next to Roy. He couldn't help but offer praise. At first, I was a bit concerned, seeing that you're just an ordinary person without magic circuits. Looks like I was worrying for nothing. Hey, I'm an ordinary person. Sorry to disappoint you. Resting against the wall for a while, Roy managed to recover some of the stamina he had just exhausted, enough to catch his breath for a moment. At the same time, his fear of the hidden world grew deeper. If just a few skeleton soldiers could put him in such a miserable state, what kind of power could those higher-level phantasmal species or Magus wield? His knowledge of Magus was only based on fragmented memories, and he had only been wary of the servants. Now, he realized how wrong he had been. For someone like him, the threat posed by those powerful Magus was no less than that of the servants. Sigh. Glancing at the now empty handgun in his hand, he couldn't help but sigh. Are the weapons of the surface world really so powerless against the magecraft of the hidden world? In this confused and disoriented state, He feared that if he didn't die in the prison tower, he'd perish in the Fourth Holy Grail War. Calming his mind, Roy stretched his joints briefly before turning to the Count. The end of the first level. That's where you said the Judgment Hall is, right? That's right. At the end of this corridor lies the Judgment Hall, which holds the sin of envy. So, there must be some sort of guardian at the first trial, right? What is it? A servant, or some kind of phantasmal species? That. The Count shook his head. I don't know either. You'll have to see for yourself once you get there. See for myself? So, the guardian isn't fixed. It changes based on my memories and psyche? Krahahaha, sharp as ever. That's right, I don't know the guardian's identity. It depends on you, the challenger. Right now, you are the one challenging this hell tower. Oh, shut up, Count. Can you stop being so dramatic all of a sudden? Be quiet. Why are you shouting so loudly? Hearing the Count's sudden outburst of demonic laughter, Roy still found it hard to get used to. In such a dire situation, his heart wasn't strong enough to make him laugh. He was already doing his best to hold back tears. A dimension traveler? But still just an ordinary person. You're no fun, Master. The Count quickly calmed down and looked at the still composed Roy, unable to help but ask. Aren't you even a little excited? Unveiling hidden truths, defeating the guardian enemies, fighting with all your might for survival. This is the heroic tale of sin and redemption. When they were outside, the Count had at least suppressed his true nature while interacting with Roy. But here in the prison tower, he had fully let loose. Why did he have so much inner drama? In this situation, anyone else wouldn't be able to laugh either. Roy's face twitched slightly, but he forced himself to respond. Excited? Of course, I'm motivated to fight with you for survival. I'm just not very good at expressing it. Oh? I'll believe you for now, but with your reclusive nature, Master, it'll be hard to make friends out there. Being told that I wouldn't make friends especially by you feels particularly insulting. The Count simply chuckled before teasing again. The 7 deadly sins, everyone is guilty of them, but I really can't imagine what the sin of envy looks like for someone like you. With your calm demeanor and steady attitude, I bet the version of me outside must find you incredibly boring. Boring? Not really. But at the beginning, Count, you were rather cold. Cold, you say? It's human nature to respond coldly to unfamiliar or unaccepted things. If you hadn't earned my recognition, you wouldn't have had the qualifications to travel alongside me. You wouldn't have become my accomplice. No matter which version of me you encounter, that principle remains the same. However, from the way you speak, it seems you and I get along well. The Count raised an eyebrow and explained. We've only formed a connection. Becoming full accomplices is still a long way off. After all, I'm not even a qualified master yet. Judging whether you're qualified isn't up to you. It's up to me. Whether you're fit to be my accomplice will be decided by that version of me outside. For now, though, I'm more curious. What form does your sin of envy take? The sin of envy in my psyche? If I had to point to someone who embodies envy, it would be them. Recalling what he witnessed of Fujimaru Ritsuka in the prison tower, Roy paused to think, and with the Count's prompting, he conjured an image in his mind. His expression shifted slightly. Oh? Judging by your face, you've thought of someone. Is that enemy a tough one to deal with? Krahahaha, I'm actually starting to look forward to this. The Count, loud as ever, grinned wildly as he looked Roy over with interest. Fine, be as excited as you want, but that enemy won't be easy to handle. Count, make sure you don't underestimate him later, or you'll regret it. Regret? Krahahaha, really? Even after seeing my power, you're saying that? This is getting interesting. Now I'm even more eager to see what your sin of envy looks like in your psyche. But before that, we should take care of the spoils first. Spoils? Roy looked around at the dust-covered floor. Besides the ashes of skeletons the Count had burned to nothing, he didn't see any so-called spoils in the dark corridor. Without offering any explanation, the Count twirled his cloak, and with the speed of a servant, dashed down the hallway, kicking up clouds of dust. Moments later, he returned, holding out his hand to reveal a handful of dark purple dust. What's this? Magic dust. Roy gave the Count a confused look, just about to ask more, but in the next moment, his mouth went dry as he saw the Count pouring the dark purple dust directly into his mouth. MMPPHH. Roy was stunned, unable to speak. Cough, cough, cough. Heaving violently, tears began to flow involuntarily from his eyes as the turmoil in his stomach made him feel nauseous. The sudden dryness only amplified his discomfort, making it hard for him to move. Do you feel anything? The Count stared at Roy in surprise. He had somehow started smoking a cigarette that had slipped from Roy's pocket, its tip already lit. Feel anything? What kind of feeling? You just fed me ash. Aside from this physical discomfort, what else could I possibly feel? Not that. The Count shook his head slightly, pointing to Roy's chest. He meant a sensation in his body, not just the physical discomfort. Does feeling like I want to vomit count? Master, what I want you to feel is the magical energy flowing within your body. How does it feel? Can you sense the magical energy circulating inside you? Magical energy flowing inside me? But I don't have any magic circuits. The Count fell silent for a moment, then took a deep breath. The fact that you can summon me and reach the prison tower means you qualify to become a Magus. Moreover, the command seal is a magical crystallization that only Magus possess, and I'm here to help you stimulate your magic circuits with the magical materials from this place. However, you really don't have even a shred of common sense about being a Magus, Master. While I'm no expert in magecraft myself, I've learned some basics from the heroic spirits I've encountered. Now I'm going to help you activate your magic circuits, otherwise, with your current half-baked skills, whether you want to participate in the Holy Grail War or pass through the upcoming Judgment Room, you have no chance. Rubbing his forehead, the Count felt a bit speechless but remained patient as he explained the relationship between summoning heroic spirits and having magic circuits. After hearing his explanation, Roy's eyes lit up, excitement flooding his being. You mean I can also become a Magus? In theory, yes. But be prepared for the worst. After all, I'm just a vengeful spirit, not a famous Magus. I can't guarantee what kind of surprises the stimulation might bring. Of course. The Count smiled wickedly. If you're scared, you can refuse now. After all, you're the master, and I trust you, Count. The response was instantaneous. I won't force you, after all, I'm just... What did you just say? I trust you, Count. His serious gaze contained no deceit. He wouldn't mistake it. What shone in his eyes was trust and recognition. There was no hint of retreat, no hesitation at all. This trust was a trust that could be placed in someone's hands, transcending the typical master-servant relationship. In fact, he felt a bit envious of the version of himself outside, who, despite being a vengeful spirit, had earned such unwavering trust from the Count. Is that so? I really have no way to deal with you. Krahahaha, fine, since you've chosen to continue, then brace yourself. I'm a vengeful spirit with no sense of mercy, and I won't hold back just because you're in pain. Be prepared, Master. Oh, Count. Chapter 6, Magus. The dryness in his mouth, the tearing sensation in his body, and the heat coursing through his veins. The pain feedback from various parts of his body sharpened Roy's mind. Unable to hold back, he let out a few pitiful cries. Arg. Since it's already begun, just grit your teeth and hold on until the end, Master. Seeing Roy's intense reaction, the Count in the prison tower felt a twinge of worry. The outside world. From the sleeping Roy's mouth came murmurs of dreams, and the sweat pouring down his forehead had soaked his entire face. Accompanied by slight spasms of his body, the faint blue outlines of magic circuits on his skin gradually became visible. The beads of sweat dripping down his forehead, along with his twisted expression, caused the Count, standing beside Roy, to feel anxious. He wiped the sweat from Roy's forehead with a freshly washed towel. Although he still wore his usual poker face, the cigarette butts scattered at his feet showed his current state of mind well. He appeared calm, but in reality, he was quite flustered, deeply concerned about his master's condition. Watching the magic circuits beginning to surface on Roy's body, the continuous murmurs and his contorted face made the Count increasingly anxious. Master. Hang in there. As a servant, he could certainly recognize what the faint blue outlines appearing on Roy's body were. Magic circuits. These are the innate sources of magical power for a Magus. They are also a unique organ of the Magus, serving the simple purpose of converting life force into magical energy. Without these nerve-like organs, a Magus cannot use magic. Similarly, the number and quality of magic circuits reflect a Magus's aptitude, as the number and quality are determined at birth. A significant part of a Magus's achievements in magic also depends on this aptitude. Since Roy had formed a contract with him, the Count could peer into his memories or dreams. The primary purpose of deliberately bringing his master into the prison tower was to ask another version of himself to help Roy open his magic circuits. The Count understood clearly that his master would never be mediocre, he simply needed an opportunity and experience to become a true strong person. Though sending him into the prison tower was quite cruel, he had no other choice now. If he couldn't steel himself, the fate awaiting him would only be death. Roy was unable to supply the magical power he needed, and for a servant, what value is there in a master who cannot supply magic? Had it not been for his inherent skill of self-replenishment, which allowed him to restore his magical power independently, he might not have even lasted until today. Having a servant that already consumed a lot of magic paired with a master who couldn't supply magic was undoubtedly adding insult to injury. Because of Roy's limitations, the Count's strength could barely be exerted at 1/5 of its capacity, and Roy had no means to counter the attacks of other Magus. Other than some street fighting methods, he had no other skills, and in this state, he couldn't display his strength. If this continued, by the time the Holy Grail War began, they would undoubtedly be the group that suffered the most brutal defeat. Thus, he realized clearly that continuing like this would only lead to slow death. Rather than waiting here for death, it was better to send Roy in and fight for it. Even though the prison tower was a place known as hell in the world, housing death row inmates who had committed heinous crimes, it was hell and also a convergence of all suffering. The dark fortress contained all the pain and despair, from which prisoners could not escape. But, unable to escape? The Count gazed softly at the boy lying on the bed and raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. There is no prison in the world from which one cannot escape, nor is there truly a hopeless predicament. Even the prison tower is not exempt. At least one person had escaped from there, and the method of escape was right in front of him. That prison could not contain the king of the caves, nor could it contain his master, so... Don't worry, master, I won't let anything happen to you. Og! Pain surged through him from various senses, causing Roy to emit a series of piercing howls. Although he didn't understand magic, it was clear that the Count's reckless method of opening the circuits was unreliable. The way of forcibly pouring magical power into his body to break the shackles and open the magic circuits was something he had never heard of. When he saw Shiru opening his magic circuits in his past life, it had definitely not been this painful. This feeling was far more intense than being stabbed a few times. As the ritual continued, the intense heat in his body increased, and the pain made Roy begin to doubt whether the Count really understood how to develop magic circuits. That line about him being just a vengeful spirit and not a real Magus, and that he wouldn't be responsible if anything went wrong, was now proving true. Og! Heart-wrenching wails escaped from his mouth. Regardless of whether it was the outside world or the dream, his body was already drenched in cold sweat. Seeing this, the Count beside him frowned and shouted. Hang in there. Endure it. Don't succumb to the pain in your body. Use the steel will that erupts in dire situations to conquer this suffering and complete your revenge against yourself. Who understands what you're saying? Roy retorted through gritted teeth. Could such immense pain really be compensated for by sheer willpower? Fortunately, the duration of this pain wasn't long, only the longest few minutes of his life, and then the agony began to ebb like a tide. Seeing Roy, who had consumed all his magical energy and was about to collapse, the Count quickly stepped forward to support him. Lowering his head to observe the faintly visible 10 or so blue circuits emerging on Roy's body, he nodded in satisfaction. At this moment, Roy's magic circuits had been activated, he had taken the first step into the world of magecraft. Similarly, the Count, who had formed a master-servant contract with Roy, could feel a significant supply of magical power coming from both the dream and the outside world. It was quite a decent amount of magical energy. For the Count in the outside world, this was his first experience of receiving magical power from his master, aside from eating and his self-recovery skill. Well done, master. This impressive amount of magical energy indicates that the magic circuits are highly efficient at converting life force into magical power. Although the quantity isn't astonishing, the quality is quite good. I didn't expect this reckless method to succeed on the first try. Succeeded on the first try? If it had failed, were you prepared to try several more times? Thinking of this, Roy's expression darkened. If he had to endure this torture a few more times, he would surely pass out from the pain. You did very well, master. I saw the will you unleashed in your desperate situation. The Count, having witnessed everything, clapped his hands in satisfaction and praised Roy. The iron will that erupted in your dire situation overcame the pain of your body. It was like launching a revenge against your past self. To use the will that erupted from desperation to conquer your past self, to be reborn, and complete your revenge against yourself. Truly splendid. Cra-ha-ha-ha-ha. What do you understand about this? Seeing the Count's constant shouting and enthusiasm, Roy wanted to retort, but the pain and weakness feedback from his body rendered him speechless. Even while holding on to the Count, his legs and feet couldn't stop trembling. Summoning what little spirit he had left, he asked, Are we heading straight to the judgment room on the first floor next? By the way, can I take a break first? I feel like I could pass out at any moment. Upon hearing this, the Count simply laughed heartily and nodded. Of course, your soul entered through the door voluntarily, you're not a prisoner here. Your words won't be restricted in this place. The prison tower can't hold you. If you want to come, then come. If you want to leave, then leave. You can naturally leave at any time. But remember, your ticket is only valid for this Holy Grail War. Once your connection with that version of me is severed, you won't be able to come and go freely anymore. Then. What you said before about not being able to escape. Krahahaha, of course, I was just kidding. If I didn't cut off your retreat, how could I make you erupt in adversity? Seeing Roy's expression darken, the Count couldn't help but laugh, raising his hand to pat Roy's back with a joyful expression, which only made Roy's face grow even darker. Don't blame me, Master. These are all things the other me asked me to tell you. He said that if I didn't say it this way, you would find it hard to struggle wholeheartedly. You all schemed against me. Don't be angry. In any case, the result is quite good. Master, have a good rest, and see you later. Noticing Roy's fatigue, the Count stopped teasing him. He slowly raised his hand and struck the back of Roy's neck, using a swift chop to help him physically fall into a light sleep. Then he took off his cloak and draped it over Roy, helping him sit up as comfortably as possible. In a daze, Roy heard the Count's final farewell. Take a short rest, Master. Until we meet again, my accomplice. The outside world. When Roy awoke again, the first thing he saw upon opening his eyes was the Count, who had been guarding his bedside all night. However, this time, what he touched was reality. What met his eyes was no longer that gloomy, damp prison tower but his warm and familiar little house. Hey, you're awake, Master. You've slept for a full 2 days and 2 nights. Youth really is great, you can just fall asleep anywhere. Seeing the green fellow at the bedside joking with him, Roy instantly felt anger bubbling up and couldn't be bothered to respond. He casually grabbed a pillow from the head of the bed and threw it at him. Huh? The Count, noticing Roy still looked vigorous and lively, couldn't help but smile slightly. With a relieved heart, he easily caught a pillow Roy threw and shook his head, saying, You really do wake up in a bad mood. Chapter 7 Priest. After waking up and washing off the cold sweat in the bathroom, Roy's expression was still somewhat dazed. The fatigue feedback from his body left him feeling a bit weak. The dream and reality were interconnected, and the experiences he had in the prison tower also reflected in his physical state in the real world. He raised his hand to try and channel his magical power. 17 thin, light blue circuits briefly flashed with fluorescence, and several streams of magical energy began to flow through the circuits in his body. He started attempting to refine and mobilize the magical energy. So this is a magic circuit. The feeling of magical energy flowing through the veins is quite wonderful. It's really not bad. As he practiced channeling the magical energy and familiarizing himself with his current physical state, Roy nodded in approval. Although he had just opened his magic circuits and was still a bit unaccustomed to his body's condition, the sensation of magical energy flowing within him felt surprisingly novel. Watching Roy successfully manipulate his magical energy, the Count sitting in the chair also received a corresponding supply. Feeling the magical energy filling his body, the weakness from the prolonged lack of magical supply gradually dissipated. Although his inherent skill, self-replenishment, allowed him to supply magical energy independently when separated from his master, that limited supply could barely sustain his most basic activities. He might manage in small-scale fights, but it was far from enough for battles involving noble phantasms or against other servants. Now that Roy had opened his magic circuits, as a contracted servant, he could most clearly perceive the changes taking place. In his mind, he couldn't help but marvel, this is a considerable supply of magical energy. It seems my master's magic circuits have a remarkably high conversion rate of magical power to life force. Although the number of magic circuits isn't particularly outstanding, their quality is excellent. With such a magical supply, combined with my self-replenishment, I can really unleash my full potential in the upcoming battles. After feeling the recently awakened magic circuits, Roy was not only familiarizing himself with his body but also contemplating his next steps. Now that the most critical issue of magical supply had been resolved, time was not on his side, and he had to consider how to proceed with the impending war. Before he could gather his thoughts, a sudden knock on the door startled him. He glanced at the Count in the corner of the room, signaling him to hide. The Count nodded in understanding and slowly transformed into particles of light, dissipating from sight. Is anyone there? A deep male voice came from outside. Coming. Feigning a lazy demeanor as if he had just woken up, he stretched, tucked his pistol from his pocket into his waistband, and quietly approached the door, opening it cautiously. Hello, are you the 7th Master of the Holy Grail War, Mr. Roy? Ah. When he opened the door, a young man with short brown hair and brown eyes appeared before him, dressed in black religious garb and wearing a golden cross necklace on his chest. His expressionless face and hollow gaze resembled that of a walking corpse. Roy recognized him immediately. Father Mapo Tofu, Kotamin Kairai. A backstabber from the moonlit world, high on the danger scale. Upon seeing him at the door, Roy instinctively shivered, feeling somewhat speechless. How did this guy arrive so quickly? Isn't there still some time before the Holy Grail War officially begins? The Church's efficiency is too high. Swallowing hard, Roy took a deep breath and nodded at him. I am Roy. May I ask who you are? Ah, My name is Kotamin Kairai. I am a priest from the church in Fuyuki City and also a staff member for this Holy Grail War. Could I take a moment of your time? Upon hearing Roy's acknowledgement, Kotamin Kairai nodded and began introducing himself. Bad luck, the Holy Church has found him so quickly. But he's the 7th master? Although he's a master, he's not a legitimate master of the Holy Grail War. Avenger is not one of the traditional 7 classes, and in this 4th Holy Grail War, the top 3 servants have already been confirmed, while Berserker is confirmed to be in the hands of the Mitu family. Given his appearance, he must have seen the other 6 masters or obtained their information. This means that the only servant not yet received by the church in this war is the caster class. So, is Kairai treating him as if he were caster's master? Thinking of this, Roy couldn't help but feel a bit excited. He had originally worried that the exposure of his identity as an Avenger would lead to ostracization from the legitimate 7 classes, and they would team up to take him down first. If Kairai considers him as the caster's master, then he's managed to blend into the legitimate 7 classes. What an unexpected gain. Is there a problem? Noticing Roy's dazed expression, Kotamin Kairai frowned slightly and spoke. No, it's nothing. He needs to act like a normal person, maintain his composure, and not raise any suspicion. I just don't understand why the staff from the church in Fuyuki City would come to me. I'm usually very law-abiding and never do anything to be ashamed of. I occasionally go to the church to pray, so there shouldn't be any need to send a priest to make me feel ashamed, right? Roy mentally reassured himself that he had concealed enough information on his end. Since the advantage was with him, he could not let Kairai see through him. At this point, Kairai hadn't been corrupted by Gilgamesh yet. As long as he remained steady, there shouldn't be any danger. As long as he doesn't give anything away, the advantage is his. Although Kairai found Roy's behavior puzzling, he didn't press further. He only wanted to complete the task assigned by the church and didn't care about anything else. He then clarified. No, I'm not here to bring Mr. Roy to repentance. I came today because of the Holy Grail War. The Holy Grail War? What's that? So he really is just an ordinary person. Seeing Roy's confusion, Kairai didn't get angry but simply pointed to the hand wearing the gloves and said, I think you must have noticed the command seals appearing on your hand. Command seals? Are you talking about this? Roy feigned a puzzled expression, removing his glove to reveal the fully manifested command seals. Yes, that's the command seals. So this thing is called a command seal? I thought it was some prank drawn by a mischievous child while I was asleep on the bus. No wonder it can't be wiped off no matter how hard I try. No, this is not simple graffiti, it is a mark of being chosen by the Holy Grail. Those who possess this mark will participate in a great magical ritual here. A magical ritual? A magic show? Roy looked at Kairai with a puzzled expression. Someone will explain the command seals to you, and my task is to take you to meet the person who can answer your questions. Mr. Roy, please come with me to the church, where someone will provide you with the answers. As he spoke, Kairai extended his hand in an inviting gesture, urging Roy to follow him. Although he felt somewhat reluctant, Roy had no reason to refuse. His current persona was just an ordinary person who had accidentally stumbled into this situation. They must have investigated his circumstances long ago. Moreover, there was still some time before the Holy Grail War officially began. While the list of masters had been determined, the servants, except for the Count, should not have been summoned yet. Taking action against him at this time would not be in accordance with the rules, so their bringing him along should genuinely just be for him to familiarize himself with the process of the Holy Grail War, as a form of courtesy toward an ordinary person, making it quite safe. If worse comes to worst, if they truly plan to ambush him before the Holy Grail War begins, he would have no choice but to use the command seals to summon the Count and fight back. He was currently in a disadvantaged position and had no right to refuse the church's request. With this in mind, Roy sighed slightly and said to Kairai, please wait a moment, father. I'll go change my clothes and be right back. Alright, Mr. Roy, our car is waiting for you downstairs. After Kairai finished speaking with a neutral expression, he turned and left. After confirming that Kairai had left, the Count, hidden in the room, returned to his normal state and sat back down in his usual chair, turning to Roy and asking. How was it, Master? Are you going to follow him? Although I didn't sense any malice from that priest, his soul gives off an unsettling aura. An unsettling aura? Roy looked at him curiously. What exactly does it feel like? I can't quite describe it. The feeling is similar to the emptiness emitted by the corpses in Prison Tower, making it hard to imagine a normal human would have such a presence. In short, it's very ominous. Master, I think following him could be dangerous. Do you still want to go? Of course, we have to go. This is a great opportunity to connect with the church. We have no reason not to. Roy nodded in response to the Count's concerns. The Count didn't understand Kotamin Kairai and wasn't surprised by his evaluation, but he did have some understanding of Kotamin Kairai. He could indeed become very dangerous, but that would be later. For now, he wouldn't do anything out of line. However, he still explained to the Count, in Fuiuki City, where the church has eyes everywhere, it's impossible to hide the fact that I've become a master from them. I was still worrying about how to deal with this matter. I didn't expect them to make a mistake this time and not realize we are intruders in the Holy Grail War. Instead, they mistakenly took us for the seventh pair of masters, Caster, which helped us avoid attracting the hatred of the other servants due to our identity. What we need to do now is solidify this identity. They are in the light while we are in the dark, so the advantage is ours. Reflecting on Kotamin Kairai's words and pondering the plot of the Fourth Holy Grail War, Roy didn't dwell on it for too long, and a simple plan began to take shape. So I plan to visit the Fuiuki City Church with him to solidify our identities as participants. The rest we can discuss later. Although it was dangerous, he had to go. Do you need me to accompany you? The Count suggested. If I'm with you, it should be much safer. No need. Exposing ourselves in someone else's territory would be too risky. The Holy Grail War hasn't started yet. Even if they kill me, it would be futile, and the Grail would simply choose another participant. Roy rejected the offer. For them, I'm clearly easier to control than other Magus whose depths they don't know. They won't do anything to me. Also, we can't guarantee that the church doesn't have a bounded field that can sense a servant's spiritual form, so you absolutely cannot come along, Count. So you plan to venture in alone? Yeah, there's no other choice. This option is the only way to maximize our interests. I see. After hearing this, the Count pondered for a moment, looked at him intently, and then nodded, seemingly agreeing with his reasoning. Since that's the case, I have no reason to continue to dissuade you. Be careful. If you encounter danger, don't hesitate to use the command seals. Call my name, and I will come immediately. Remember, don't risk your life, understood? Although the plan was somewhat risky, it was undeniable that it was indeed the best course of action. Moreover, since the master had made such a decision, he had even less reason to refuse. Don't worry, Count. If I run into danger, I'll definitely summon you and then escape quickly. Roy patted his chest to reassure the Count before opening the door and leaving. I really can't do anything about you. Then take care, Master. Watching Roy leave, the Count slightly lowered the brim of his hat, and his dark green figure gradually vanished from the room. Chapter 8, 8 Rules. After getting into the car arranged by Kotamin Kairai, they drove for about 20 minutes. As Roy watched the city gradually recede in the distance, he noticed more and more trees, signaling that they were approaching the outskirts of Fuiuki City. If they continued in this direction, they would soon leave the city's boundaries. He was quite familiar with this area. After all, during the years he was involved in the underworld, territorial disputes among organizations were common, and large-scale fights in the city were not allowed. So, the docks of Fuiuki City at night and the sparsely populated suburbs were places he had visited frequently. As Roy lost himself in thought, the car finally came to a stop in front of an old church. Kotamin Kairai helped him open the car door and said, Mr. Roy, we have arrived. My father is waiting for you inside. I understand. Following Kotamin Kairai out of the car, the open doors of the church clearly indicated that they had been expected for some time. Back already, Kairai? As a deep male voice echoed, a somewhat burly elderly priest holding a Bible slowly approached them. Yes, father, I'm back. Kotamin Kairai nodded and then raised his hand in a gesture of invitation, leading Roy to the elderly priest and beginning the introduction. This is my father, the priest of the Fuiuki Church, Kotamin Rizai, who is also in charge of this Holy Grail War. He will answer your questions from here. Hello, I am Roy. Ah, it's a pleasure to meet you, the one chosen by the Holy Grail, the seventh master, Mr. Roy. After a brief self-introduction, Roy feigned ignorance, asking directly, Father, could you explain more about the Holy Grail War and this strange symbol? Removing his gloves, Roy naturally revealed the command seals on the back of his hand for them to see. Indeed, it is a command seal. Kotamin Rizai scrutinized the command seal on Roy's hand, confirming in his mind Roy's identity as the seventh master. Although he was somewhat surprised at first upon receiving the information, how could an ordinary person be chosen by the Holy Grail? Could there have been an error in the intelligence gathering? It was only now that he could believe such an outrageous occurrence when faced with the facts. However, an ordinary person, huh? That could be quite good. Ordinary people are easier to control than those reckless, rogue Magus. With this, the number of participants in the Holy Grail War had already decreased from 7 to 6, significantly lowering the difficulty of achieving victory. It seems his old friend has really been fortunate. Please have a seat. Since you have been chosen by the Holy Grail, I will gradually summarize the rules concerning the command seals and the Holy Grail War for you. Inviting Roy into the church, Kotamin Rizai gestured for him to sit down, suppressing his emotions as he looked at Roy earnestly. Mr. Roy, I have both fortunate and unfortunate news to share with you. You have been chosen by the Greater Holy Grail to participate as one of the masters in the Holy Grail War, and the red mark on the back of your hand is the best proof of your selection. Your command seal. Speaking of which, you and another priest have been mentioning the Holy Grail War. Is the Holy Grail you refer to the same one mentioned in the Bible? Oh? Upon hearing this, Kotamin Rizai asked, somewhat surprised, could it be that Mr. Roy has read our teachings? Ah. To be honest, I consider myself a rather devout Christian. Roy reached into his pocket, pulled out a silver cross pendant he had bought at a souvenir shop, and handed it to Kotamin Rizai. Seeing the cross in Roy's palm, Kotamin Rizai couldn't help but smile, his attitude becoming noticeably friendlier. No wonder. I didn't expect Mr. Roy to be a believer as well. If you have time, feel free to come to my church for prayers. However, it is unfortunate that this Holy Grail is not a sacred vessel containing the blood of Jesus, but merely a term. It is essentially a universal wish-granting machine capable of realizing any desire. Ah. That's a pity. I thought I would actually get to see the legendary holy relic. Roy feigned disappointment, his tone slightly surprised. But a universal wish-granting machine? Is something like that really possible, like Aladdin's magic lamp? Who knows? Although the ritual of the Holy Grail War has been held several times, each time it has failed due to some irresistible factors, so the Holy Grail only exists in rumors. No one has ever seen it. Then what about the Holy Grail War? Seeing Roy looking a bit anxious, Kotamin Rizai waved his hand to signal him to calm down and continued explaining, the so-called Holy Grail War is a battle where 7 chosen masters, along with their summoned servants, fight fiercely for the ownership of the Holy Grail. The reward for the last victor is, in fact, the Holy Grail. After listening to Kotamin Rizai's explanation, Roy nodded. Although Kotamin Rizai was a black sheep, he indeed did not hide any information about the rules and provided everything truthfully. It was unclear whether his fabricated identity as a believer had raised his favorability or if he thought an ordinary person like Roy posed no threat, or perhaps it was a combination of both. As for the failures of the Holy Grail War, Roy had a pretty good understanding of them. According to the setting of the moonlit world, the first war failed because the Holy Grail system had just been established, and neither the participating masters nor the servants had the experience or awareness to work together. The masters didn't even have command seals to restrain the servants, which made it impossible for them to control the servants' actions. Thus, various factors led to the complete collapse of the First Holy Grail War. In the Second Holy Grail War, although lessons were learned from the first, leading to the creation of the command seal system and the planning of various rules, it failed again due to instability and other factors. Only with the improvements made in the Third War was the Holy Grail system truly completed. However, all the troubles began in the Third War. Due to the disastrous failures of the first 2 wars, the Insburn family developed a desire to create chaos and actually violated the rules by summoning Angramaniu, who belonged to the extra-class Avenger. However, to their surprise, his inherent strength was pitiably weak, and he was quickly eliminated. Yet, the accompanying evil and distortion he brought were extraordinarily strong, leading to the Greater Grail being tainted by the resentment embedded in his soul, causing the magical ritual to fail once more. This also laid the groundwork for the subsequent 4th and 5th wars. Perhaps if it weren't for the Insburn family's meddling, these troubles wouldn't have occurred, and the Holy Grail War might have concluded in the 3rd. Considering the stories of the 2 homunculi, Iris v. Elon Ilias v. El, it was evident that this family was more of a hindrance than a help. However, it seemed he didn't have the right to criticize them this time, as his own servant also appeared to be an extra Avenger. Count of Monte Cristo. Speaking of which, if the Count were to enter the Holy Grail, would he perhaps purify the black mud, similar to how Angramaniu would negate his own negativity? No, such a thing was completely impossible to consider. Mr. Roy. Kotamin Rizai's voice pulled Roy's thoughts back to reality. As the referee, his work could be considered done at this point, and he should be sending Roy off. But looking at the silver cross still hanging in Roy's hand and his rather pleasant face, he let out a slight sigh and advised. Mr. Roy, to be frank, you are the only ordinary person in this Holy Grail War, so your situation will be very dangerous. The Holy Grail War revolves around the mystical side of magic, and as an ordinary person, you shouldn't take unnecessary risks. If possible, please summon your servant as soon as you can to ensure your safety. If your servant is eliminated during the war, please forfeit immediately and come here to seek refuge from the church. Kyrie and I will always be here. Finally, may the Lord bless his believers. Amen. Amen. After a moment, Roy also mimicked the gesture of making the sign of the cross. Thank you for the information, Father Kotamin. May the Lord bless you as well. Then I shall take my leave. Alright, goodbye, young friend Roy. I hope you remain safe. Meanwhile, in a luxurious mansion somewhere in Fuiuki City, an elegant man with a goatee received the information from the church in Fuiuki City. It was regarding the seventh master, Roy. Seeing the paper crane familiar that flew into his hand, Tokiomi Tasaka extended his finger to unfold it. The information recorded on it surprised him a bit. Oh, the seventh master is actually not a Magus, but an ordinary person caught up in this. It seems he's also a bit of a thug. There are no traces of him using magic or having contact with the mystical side in past records. It looks like he is simply an ordinary person, just a lucky one chosen by the Holy Grail. After reading this freshly obtained information, Tokiomi Tasaka felt genuine disdain, full of contempt for Roy's existence. To him, someone like Roy, an ordinary person selected by the Holy Grail and accidentally involved in their ritual, posed no threat at all. Even if he could summon a servant using the Holy Grail and Leyline's magical energy, he wouldn't be able to provide any mana to the servant without a magic circuit. Therefore, Roy would undoubtedly be the first master to be eliminated in this Holy Grail war. From this point on, the Holy Grail war had already become a contest among 6 participants. Now, counting himself, all the masters for this Holy Grail war had appeared, and among these 7 masters, half were not a concern for him. Kiriko Tamin was his trusted disciple, who would not only pose no threat to him but would also assist him in achieving the final victory. As for the other peculiar participants, the already fallen Matu family couldn't even produce a suitable contestant and had given up on the 3 main classes. Additionally, the Magus hired by the Innsburn family was also insignificant, and the clock tower's ungraduated students were even less concerning. Now, there was even an ordinary person caught up in this. To Tokiomi Tasaka, these 4 participants posed no threat to him at all. The only one he needed to be wary of was the renowned lord of the Department of Mineralogy from the Clock Tower, Kenneth Elmeloy Archibald. Facing Kenneth, who was known as a prodigy in the magic world, Tokiomi Tasaka knew he had no hope of winning in a straightforward contest of magical skill, but things were different now. The Holy Grail War was not merely a contest of magical prowess. This time, even the church, as the arbitrating party, stood on his side. With Kyrai's assistance, he had 2 servants at his disposal. Moreover, to ensure victory, he had spent a high price to acquire a legendary relic and prepared to use it as a medium to summon the strongest heroic spirit. With such an absolute advantage, he was confident that even that lord would not be able to defeat him. This Holy Grail war was already in his pocket. With the timing, location, and support on his side, how could he lose? Suppressing the restlessness in his heart, Tokiomi Tasaka's excited hands trembled slightly, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curve upward. The long-cherished wish of the Tasaka family. Is it finally going to be realized in my generation? Chapter 9, 9 Meta Night. Suburbs of Fuiuki City. Master, you really are something. Just a trip to the church, and you've managed to package yourself as a believer. The Count couldn't help but laugh when he saw Roy returning with a black Bible in hand and a shiny silver cross around his neck. At the same time, he thought to himself that this master was certainly full of surprises. With his keen eye, he could tell that these 2 items were not just any random trinkets, they carried a faint blessing. The black-covered Bible was an authentic item consecrated by the church, and the cross was a special artifact soaked in holy water, capable of warding off evil. The incantations inscribed on it were sufficient to deal with the lowest-tier undead. Although they couldn't be considered particularly precious treasures, they weren't something that could be casually gifted. The fact that the priest of the Fuiuki church had so easily given them to an ordinary person he had just met surprised him. Garnering such goodwill from the church upon their first meeting, this master of his truly had a knack for unexpected accomplishments. I didn't expect that old priest to be so enthusiastic, perhaps it's more accurate to say devout. I just casually mentioned wanting to get closer, and he ended up stuffing these gifts into my hands as he left. He even invited me to try taking up the role of a priest at the Fuiuki church after the Holy Grail War. Well, congratulations then, master. Being accepted by the church could be a way out for you. However, you need to be cautious. Those priests aren't to be underestimated compared to Magus. Seeing the Count's puzzled expression, Roy added with a bitter smile, I haven't betrayed anyone, you have to believe me. I would certainly believe you, master. If you were truly to betray me, you could just use a command spell to control me to kill myself without needing to take this risk by coming back. The Count sitting beside Roy casually flipped through the Bible while speaking. The church's folks claim to work in the name of the Lord. Although it seems righteous, they are just as corrupt as the Mages Association, so you should be careful when dealing with them. I know that. Roy agreed with the Count's perspective. That priest, Kyrai, might seem decent, but he's ultimately someone who has broken the rules and is aligned with the other competitors. He's certainly not someone worthy of trust. Reflecting on the words of Kyrai, Roy recalled the dealings he had with Tokiomi Tasaka and could guess that Tokiomi had already gathered all the information about him. However, he didn't mind this leak of information. In fact, he was grateful to the church for helping him create confusion. He had only become a magus just yesterday, while the church's information was based on his status not long ago. Through his conversations with Kyrai, he could confirm that in the intelligence they collected, he still appeared as an ordinary person incapable of even supplying magical energy, which did not raise any suspicions. This misinformation could actually help him conceal his true identity and provide him with more room for maneuvering. Even when the Holy Grail War began, they would likely categorize him as an outsider without competitive threat. While it was not impossible for them to eliminate him first, as long as he remained hidden enough, no one would willingly expose themselves just to eliminate someone like him. No one would be foolish enough to reveal their position and strength for a team lacking any winning capability. Thus, as long as he could stay hidden, his safety factor was actually quite high. After contemplating for a moment, Roy decided not to dwell on the matter any longer. He glanced at a huge building not far away, exhaled, lowered his head, and began to think, his expression shifting between light and dark, as if he were engaged in some inner struggle. Stealing a glance at the Count, who was engrossed in reading the Bible, Roy slightly parted his lips as if wanting to say something, but after hesitating, he ultimately decided to put his hands down. No, it's not possible. Attacking the Matu family or something. That's just too extravagant. Like many others who had came to this world, Roy also yearned to change the tragic fate. The Matu family was, as he knew, the greatest tragedy. If the Fourth Holy Grail War was a collection of tragedies, then the greatest victims in this tragedy were undoubtedly the unfortunate Sakura Matu and Kiryu Matu. The former suffered because her father, the fool Tokiomi Tasaka, meant well but ended up doing harm by adopting her into the Matu family, unaware that it had already fallen. The once righteous ally had become something unrecognizable, and the proud butterfly magecraft had devolved into bug magecraft, subjecting Sakura to over a decade of inhumane torment in the insect nest. Kiryu Matu shared a similarly tragic story. After years of struggle, he escaped the hellish insect nest, only to willingly endure the cruel transformation by the old worm's mark in an attempt to rescue Sakura from her suffering, representing the Matu family in battle. After a year of torment and modification, he too became something unrecognizable and ultimately perished in the Fourth Holy Grail War, exhausted and extinguished. If it were a fairy tale where a knight dies to protect a little princess, it would indeed be quite tragic. But he would never know that Matuzokan never intended to keep the promise from the beginning. While he fought valiantly, Sakura had already been pushed into the insect nest by the old worm, making all his efforts utterly futile. Having witnessed such tragedies from across the world, he had empathized with it. If only he could save her and reverse the tragedy. This was empathy, and Roy truly wanted to try to save her, but he also had a clearer understanding of his own situation. In terms of magical prowess, he was just a novice who had just opened his circuits, unworthy even to carry the shoes of a master like the old worm. If nothing unexpected happened, he would probably be devoured by his swarm on their first encounter, dying a death that could not be more final. But if the Count were to intervene? Now that the issue of magical energy had been resolved, besides the berserker summoned by the Matu family, the Count, as a top-tier servant, could easily sweep through the entire Matu household. Even the so-called Magus masters would be meaningless when crushed under the mysterious specifications of the servants. The magecraft of Matuzokan, that old worm, would not stir a ripple in the Count's hands. Even if Lancelot had been summoned, in his berserk state, he would be powerless to stop the Count, who moved with incredible speed, from taking someone away. But would doing so really benefit him? He had no familial ties to Sakura Matu, he hadn't even met her. Why should he take such a risk for her? Was it truly out of goodwill that he would put himself in danger? Once the Count and he were exposed, their initiative would likely turn into a passive situation. Currently, none of the masters had revealed themselves. Everyone's situation was like hunters in a dark jungle. The deeper they hid, the greater their advantage. Was it really worth the risk of acting recklessly for someone else's well-being? And who would thank him for it? With no returns, he would instead bear risks and responsibilities. He was no saint, at most, he was just a small-time thug who knew how to play both sides and had some street-fighting skills. I have no power. He couldn't do anything. Let's go back. After a long internal struggle, Roy sighed, disappointed, and called for the Count to return with him. However, the Count did not move, merely narrowing his eyes to look at him nonchalantly as he lit a cigarette. Count. What are you doing? We should go back, we need to prepare for the upcoming battles, I know. However, before we return, I'd like to talk to you first, Master. I can't ignore this burden you're carrying. Is it that obvious? Roy forced a bitter smile. What do you think? Has no one ever told you? Master, you're really not good at hiding your emotions. That bitter expression on your face reveals everything. Who could you possibly hide it from? So, what exactly happened? Can you share it with me? No need to keep it to yourself, we are accomplices after all. The Count's golden eyes lit up, staring at him earnestly. All right then. Count, come with me to a place. After a moment of hesitation, Roy finally spoke. I'll explain on the way. I might really need to borrow your strength this time, Count. Glad to serve, my accomplice. The Count took his hand. Krahahaha, I thought it was something serious. Seeing you stammering like that, it turns out it's just this. After hearing Roy's account, the Count seemed to understand everything. According to fairy tale logic, a little girl has fallen into the hands of a dark mage and is currently suffering. A certain brave warrior has learned of this and wants to save her, but he is afraid of implicating his companions and thus hesitates to act. That's about it. For the Count, the idea of an innocent girl falling into the hands of a dark mage was not particularly shocking. After all, he had lived in the chaotic Middle Ages, where child abduction and even child trafficking were common occurrences. Moreover, having crawled out of the hell of the prison tower, he had seen all the tragedies of the world. As a vengeful spirit, he did not feel much empathy for Sakuramatu's tragedy. There were far too many misfortunes in the world, he could not manage them all and had no desire to. He was just a vengeful spirit, not some righteous ally. What did the tragedies of others have to do with him? However, since this was a request from his master, it had to be treated differently. But to think that the first time he was asked to use his power, it was just for this. My master, I must say, you're adorably foolish. Glancing at the somewhat anxious Roy, the Count couldn't help but smile wryly. Don't worry, master. Just leave it to me. This is it. Arriving near the Matu residence, the Count swiftly exterminated all the detection familiars and placed Roy in a safe location, then turned his gaze toward the eerie old mansion of the Matu family. TSK, this is really unpleasant magecraft. The stench of decay here surpasses even those evil spirits in Prison Tower. It seems that the Magus inside is indeed a scum of the earth. Confirming the location of the Matu mansion, he patted Roy on the shoulder and reminded him, Master, you wait for me at this safe distance. I can handle what comes next alone. Just stay safe. Roy nodded, accepting the suggestion. You too, Count. If you need support with a command spell, contact me immediately. He understood his own weakness. If he followed the Count inside, he would not only be unable to help but would only become a burden. No need for that. The Count laughed heartily. For a vengeful spirit like me, this prison that isn't even hell can't possibly defeat me. As a servant, I'm not weak enough to need my master's concern. Wait for me here. Once I shatter this ridiculous cage, our journey will be to the other side of vengeance and grace. Krahahaha. With a bout of wild laughter, the green cloak on his shoulders billowed in the wind as the Count rose, surrounded by dazzling black light, and charged into the old Matu mansion. Chapter 10, Tensen and Salvation boom! Boom! Fire from hell descended without warning, instantly painting the night sky in orange and yellow flames. Accompanied by a burst of demonic laughter, the entire Matu family was completely obliterated in a haze. Krahahaha. What's wrong? Is this the extent of the Makiri's origin from the three great families? In the searing sea of flames, the Count stepped on Matuskin's head with a heat wave, relentlessly trampling the ugly head beneath the hard heel of his shoe. On his shoulder was the small figure of Sakura, just brought out from the worm nest. As for Matukariya, that foolish idiot was knocked unconscious and tossed aside during their first encounter to prevent him from causing trouble. His body could barely hold up, which is why he hadn't summoned his servant earlier. According to the plan set by the old worm, he would summon it on the eve of the Holy Grail War to conserve as much fighting stamina as possible. This lack of servant protection allowed the Count to kill his way through the Matu household as if it were an unguarded territory. Even if Matuskin had summoned a servant, he wouldn't have helped the old worm deal with the Count. Given their supposedly harmonious father-son relationship, he would only relish the opportunity to deal a lethal blow to the old worm while watching him get beaten up. How could he possibly come to his rescue? A false family with no real emotions harbored no genuine father-son bond. Who exactly are you? Why are you attacking the Matu family? Matuskin, pressed to the ground, was filled with rage and confusion. He had merely been drinking tea at home when this unknown heroic spirit broke through his defensive spell and intruded, moving with such airy speed that he hadn't even had time to react. Within just a few breaths, he found himself pinned to the ground. As for his swarms and the worms he had cultivated, they were utterly powerless against the flames fueled by the Count's hatred, instantly engulfed by the scorching fire before they even had a chance to retaliate. reduced to ashes before they could even reach the Count's clothing. The Count was no saint himself. Compared to the Avenger Rankremaniu who had tainted the Holy Grail, he was the true embodiment of vengeance. He showed no mercy to vile individuals like Matuskin. A swift strike from his hand sent black flames easily severing Matuskin's limbs, forcing him down beneath his foot. Arg! The intense pain made Matuskin's decayed features twist into a more grotesque expression. Be quiet, old man. Hearing Matuskin's agonizing wails beneath him, the Count frowned, pressing down harder with his foot, as if he could crush the old worm's dried-up head at any moment. You bastard! Og! Matuskin wanted to curse, but the black flames continued to burn him like maggots on his bones, making him wish for death. The King of the Cavern. This was the name or title of the most famous Avenger in the world. The flames, born from the hatred of hell, burned not just his body but his soul. Even though he was no longer human, he still felt the searing pain of this flame. This guy was more like a demon than himself. No. He must endure, his lifelong wish is not yet fulfilled. He cannot die here. Though his magecraft was useless against him and his limbs had been destroyed, there was still hope. He had long forsaken his humanity for immortality. As long as he could survive this ordeal, he could just switch bodies afterward. As long as the worm was still on Sakura, he still had a chance for resurrection. With this thought, a resolute glint flashed in his eyes as he opened his mouth to chant a spell, attempting to trigger the self-detonation of the worms within him to escape. However, the Count, already informed by Roy, would never allow him to have his way. The fiery palm pressed down directly on his head, interrupting his self-detonation magecraft. Kill me. Matuskin whispered in despair. I can give you anything you want, please, grant me release. Release? Oh? Even someone as inhuman as you seeks release? The Count leaned down, speaking in a low tone. Is this your way of seeking death? I know your worm is planted on that girl in the basement, isn't it? And what you most want now is to die quickly to avoid me, and then switch bodies to revive, right? You. Upon hearing the Count's words, Matuskin felt an immediate sense of dread. His pupils constricted, staring in disbelief at the avenging spirit. This was his most important secret, not even Matukariya knew. How could this guy know? In that moment, a fear of death enveloped his heart. Looking at the Count's sinister smile, Matuskin's damaged body trembled with a chill as he fell into despair. No. Don't do this. You can't do this. Krahahahaha, yes, that's the look. The despair of someone about to die. Now that you've shown that expression, it means I've hit the mark, you filthy bug. That was just the beginning, the real show is yet to come. Looking at the Count's sinister smile, Matuskin's heart trembled, and in the moment of death, he began to curse wildly. You demon. Unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable. You hypocritical captors of justice, all you do is tarnish my ideals with your boring, false morality. I will never forgive you. Never. I curse you. I curse you all. Arg. You're talking too much. With a crunch, the Count easily crushed the old worm's skull underfoot and reached out toward his body. Disgusting worm, I am a vengeful spirit from hell. Your little curses are nothing to me. As he spoke, black flames continuously burned in his palm, starting to consume Matuskin's body, sizzling the parasitic worms within. However, how dare you curse my master? You lowly creature, don't be so self-righteous. If it weren't for the fact that the crest on you still holds some value, I would have already left you without a grave. Now, let your rotting body and that lowly soul turn to ash together. Kraaha. Accompanied by demonic laughter, the black flames erupted, engulfing Matuskin's remaining body entirely. Only the piece of skin bearing the magic crest was stripped away by the Count in advance, allowing it to be preserved. Ugh! The man lying on the ground twitched his eyes amidst the searing flames. Hey, pitiful bug, you should have heard that girl still carries the worm of this old worm within her. Casting a glance at the still half-conscious Matukariya on the ground, the Count kicked him up. Ah! The sudden pain in his abdomen made Matukariya's teeth chatter, and his dazed mind began to clear. Yes, in his half-asleep state, Matukariya had indeed heard the Count's conversation with the old bug. Although the old bug's screams before death were quite pleasant, upon hearing that Sakura still carried that old man's worm, the original joy vanished instantly. Damn it! That cursed old worm had to leave something like this even in death. He curled up, looking at the man before him, who resembled a demon, and lowered his head to plead with him. Please. I refuse. That little girl's body cannot withstand the flame's erosion. I can indeed eliminate that disgusting bug, but the girl's life would end with it. Knowing Matukariya's intentions, the Count directly refused him. How can it be? Sakura? Seeing Matukariya kneeling on the ground, the Count snorted coldly, placing Sakura before him, And as he left, he said, "Go find a professional Magus in this field. The modifications this girl underwent aren't too deep, there's still a chance of recovery. Find a Magus, huh?" Hearing this, Mitakaraya's eyes gradually regained some light. Compared to the fiery chaos still raging at the Mita household, the church has been busy covering up the truth, while the police are actively trying to manage the situation at the Mita residence. Roy and the Count, this master and servant duo, decisively left the scene, keeping their achievements and names hidden. The people have been saved, but the worms remain. After all, the Count isn't a legitimate Magus, he can't unravel Matuskan's magecraft. Extracting the worm without harming Sakura is simply impossible. However, Roy isn't worried. Sakura's transformation isn't deeply rooted, and that worm hasn't settled firmly in her body yet. For Sakura's sake, Mitakaraya will ultimately take her back to Tokyomi Tasaka, since among the Magus he knows, only Tokyomi can save her. Given Tokyomi Tasaka's connections, finding a Magus skilled in healing shouldn't be too difficult. Unlike other Magus, Tokyomi still retains a basic sense of empathy as a father. He'll probably feel a bit guilty about pushing Sakura into danger, especially since he has always despised rogue Magus, yet this time he has harmed his own daughter. He will regret his foolish actions. However, considering his personality, he will likely still transfer Sakura to another family. After all, he values the identity of a Magus too much, and Sakura's unique nature means she cannot lead an ordinary life. Let's hope Tokyomi learns from this lesson and carefully checks the background and character of anyone he considers for transfer in the future, so he doesn't repeat this mistake. But that's no longer something he needs to think about. He has done all he can do, and whatever happens next will be their own choice. Allies of justice do exist, but they cannot always prevent tragedy in time. Glancing at the Count walking beside him, Roy smiled and softly spoke. "Thank you, Count. Let's go home." Chapter 11 Regret. A few months later, the Holy Grail War is about to begin. Fuyuki City. In a fairly spacious room, several faint blue lights flickered gently. From his fingertips, vague outlines slowly took shape in the void. Not bad at all. You've managed to grasp the basics of Makiri's Olgin's butterfly magecraft in such a short time. Watching the pale blue butterfly made of magical energy resting in Roy's hand, the Count nodded slightly. Although he had promised his master to successfully rescue the girl named Sakura Tasaka, this time, he had also brought along a bit of his own selfishness. Before killing Matuskan, he had first tortured him severely, successfully peeling the magic crest of the Mita family from his skin to bring back for Roy. Then, he obtained some magical books related to the Mita family from Skun's study, enabling his master to formally enter the realm of magecraft. To become an outstanding Magus, 3 essential elements are required: magic circuits, magic crests, and magical aptitude. As for Roy's aptitude, that's beyond his control, but the first 2 elements are manageable. His magic circuits had already been opened up by another version of himself in the prison tower. Although their quality was decent, the quantity was not impressive since he was a first-generation Magus. However, it was much better than before, at least he had the ability to convert magical energy and the qualification to learn magecraft. But to become an excellent Magus, it's not enough to have just magic circuits, exceptional magic crests are equally indispensable. In this regard, Roy was very clear about himself. As a first-generation Magus, the magic circuits he had opened were only 18 in number, at most placing him at a mediocre level. Compared to the other first-generation Magus Shiru and Iya, he was lacking by nearly 10 circuits. Although he knew that Shiru was a genius in the realm of magecraft, chosen by Allah as a counter-guardian, the gap between them was still too large. Most Magus could easily outclass him in terms of the number of magic circuits. Moreover, as a first-generation Magus and a recluse, he had no means to obtain precious magic crests. Instead, future generations were still waiting for him to leave behind a legacy of magic crests. It's important to note that every magic crest is a mystical imprint that a Magus spends their entire life training and solidifying, serving as an essential inheritance for forming a magical lineage. The value of such crests in the magical world is immeasurable. The longer the lineage of a magic crest, the more precious it becomes. Magic crests contain the research achievements from the very beginning of the Magus's ancestry up to the present. What should be inherited? He did not know that the Count had originally planned to use the wealth he accumulated through the Golden Rule in the current world to help him acquire a magic crest from some fallen magical families. But upon hearing his master's intention to attack the Matu family, he suddenly became invigorated. Compared to the magic crests that had only been passed down for 3 generations or less, the Mata family's magic crest lineage is undoubtedly historical, with an embedded value that is a treasure hard to overlook in the entire magical world. Tokyomi Tasaka had even gone so far as to have his daughter adopted into the Matu family for her to inherit their magic crest. This illustrates the lethal attraction that it holds for Magus. Even someone like Tokyomi, a master of magecraft, could not resist. And the Count smiled. Since such a magic crest was right in front of him, why shouldn't he take it? Previously, without his master's orders, he didn't want to alert the enemy and had refrained from provoking the Matu family out of caution. Now that his master had declared an attack, what reason did he have to refuse the Matu family's crest? Looking at Roy, who was still familiarizing himself with butterfly magecraft, the Count smiled. Finally, it's taking shape. Over these past few months, he and Roy had diligently studied the magical assets left within the magic crests and also witnessed the transformation process from Makiri's Elgin to Matuskin. From the very beginning, the partner pursuing world peace, renowned for his butterfly magecraft, had unknowingly begun to descend into the cruel practice of parasitic body horror. This was a change that had taken 500 years of obsession, and it represented the fall of a once just partner. Roy couldn't help but feel a bit melancholic as he looked at the faint blue crest flickering on his arm and said, "Good night, Makiri's Elgin. Good death, Matuskin." On the other side, in Fuyuki City, the Tasaka family. At this moment, Tokiomi Tasaka, dressed in a red suit, sat in a tea chair, his expression melancholic, no longer reflecting the elegance of his past. The reason was simple: a few months ago, a sudden fire erupted at the Matu family in the dead of night, consuming most of their estate. After learning the news that night, he hurried to the scene. That evening, witnessing Matuskin's demise was Matukariya, who was in high spirits, even fearing that the flames weren't fierce enough. He had taken gasoline from the garage and deliberately coated several areas of the house. As for Matubayakaya, who was out at the time, upon hearing that Matuskin had been killed, he was even happier than Matukariya. He rushed home overnight and, after salvaging some of the Matu family's belongings from the parts that were still intact, his joy only increased. As for Matuskin's corpse, the missing magic crests and magical book, who cared about such things? The two brothers would rather have those cursed items far away. After completing all this, the two brothers exchanged a deep glance and together admired the most beautiful sight of their lives, the destruction of the Matu family before the flames. That night, Matubayakaya even suggested that he, Matukariya, and Shinji celebrate this day at a hotel in Fuyuki City, insisting they must drink until they were drunk and designate this day as a holiday to be celebrated every year. Thus, that evening, Tokiomi Tasaka, who hurried home, saw a scene that shocked him to his core. His own family home was burning, yet the two brothers laughed in the sea of flames, showing no signs of sadness. In that moment, Tokiomi began to doubt whether he had fallen under an illusion. But that didn't matter now, he only wanted to know where Sakura was. Filled with anxiety, Tokiomi ran through the flames toward the two brothers, who were laughing madly. However, when he approached Matukariya and grabbed his arm, wanting to ask for clarity, Matukariya said nothing. Instead, he suddenly pulled out a brick from behind and swung it hard against Tokiomi's head, instantly knocking him unconscious. By the time he awoke the next morning, he found himself in the police station of Fuyuki City. When the police arrived that night, they found the unconscious Tokiomi, and he naturally became a suspect in the arson case, detained for several days to assist with the investigation, which forced him to spend a significant amount of money to manage his connections for an early release. Because of this, he returned home exhausted only to see Sakura had already been brought back by Matukariya. His normally gentle wife, Aoi Tasaka, looked at him with a hint of anger. When Matukariya returned Sakura the night before, Aoi stood frozen. Suddenly struck dumb, her heart, which had already ached slightly from Sakura's adoption, completely broke down at this moment. Especially upon seeing the wounds and blood on Sakura's body, as well as the unfamiliarity in her daughter's gaze. What on earth had happened? What kind of suffering had Sakura endured during her time at the Mita household? Although she never interfered with her husband's decisions, she believed Tokiomi was a good father, doing everything for their daughter's sake. But why was it like this now? Seeing Aoi in such a state, Matukariya said nothing more, merely shook his head, and silently turned to leave. There were things she couldn't know. So when Tokiomi returned home, he realized everything had changed, even the way his wife and children looked at him felt different. As a responsible father, he certainly cared about Sakura, but this time he found her distant. No matter what he asked, Sakura refused to respond, even avoiding his gaze. His anger, which had already been pent up, intensified at this sight, and he immediately resolved to confront Matukariya for answers. But when he saw the notebook that Aoi handed over, he froze. This was the notebook that Matukariya had entrusted to Aoi Tasaka to give to Tokiomi. It recorded the deeds of Matuskin and the suffering that Sakura endured. As he flipped through its contents, Tokiomi's expression suddenly stiffened, and his anger toward Matukariya vanished without a trace. The more he read, the colder his hands and feet became. In the end, all that remained was an endless sense of regret and guilt. He realized the meaning behind Mitakaraya's brick and understood why Sakura had been avoiding him since her return. He comprehended everything. Instantly, the elegance on his face was gone. Mituskin. He had been completely deceived. The magecraft of the Mita family had long since degraded into the parasitic, inhumane worm magecraft he knew nothing about, and his daughter had become the object of that parasitism. He had proposed adopting Sakura without any intention of passing down the magic crest. From the very beginning, he planned to transform her into his parasitic tool. She had personally pushed her beloved daughter into hell. Upon learning the truth, a furious Tokiomi's eyes burned with rage. He could no longer maintain any semblance of elegance as he grabbed his mystic code and rushed to the Matu family to confront the old worm. But the Matu estate had already been reduced to ashes, and the two brothers, Mitabayakaya and Matukaraya, had hidden away. Without a target, his pent-up anger had nowhere to go, and he could only return home in disgrace. After that, his daughter Sakura returned but never spoke another word to him, refusing to call him father again. Instead, she locked herself in her room, refusing to see anyone, even her sister and mother. His wife didn't say anything, but it was evident that her attitude had drastically changed due to this incident. From her previous gentleness, she had turned cold. Even his eldest daughter, Rin, who had always had the closest relationship with him, was now trying to distance herself from him. In a short time, his status in the family had undergone a complete upheaval. A tragic chasm had formed between him and his family. The more he thought about it, the more agitated Tokiomi became, and the teacup in his hand shattered without him noticing. The Matu family had been consumed by flames, Matuskin's fate remained uncertain, and Matukaraya had not told him what had happened that night at the Matu estate. But he swore in the name of the Tasaka family that if Matuskin was still alive and dared to show his face again, he would make that old worm understand what the wrath of a master truly meant. Chapter 12. The benefactor and the killer. Since the night the Matu family was destroyed by flames, his meeting with Mitakaraya happened much later. After that day, Tokiomi Tasaka and a church in Fuiuki City both came to inquire about what exactly happened that night at the Mita household. To avoid implicating the benefactor who had helped him, Mitakaraya explained to the outside world that it was the berserker he summoned that had annihilated the Matu family. Although Matuskin was a powerful master of magecraft, that power was only significant in relation to other Magus. When it came to servants, even a Magus's strength could be hard to exert, let alone initiate a direct betrayal. Thus, Matuskin's death was not something they found difficult to understand. Roy did not know how he found out his address, but one morning, he got called by Mitakaraya. He said he wanted to invite him out to meet. To avoid attracting attention, he specifically chose a location at the less frequented side hall of the Rudo temple. The time was also very considerate, scheduled for midnight. At first, Roy was a bit surprised when he saw this man who had just escaped from hell appear again. "I didn't expect you to still be in the Holy Grail War." Looking at the deep red marks on Matukaraya's hand, Roy's tone carried a hint of surprise. Matuskin is dead. With Tokiomi Tasaka's connections, finding a Magus to solve the parasite he planted in Sakura is just a matter of time. However, he should learn from this and find a more reliable magical family to adopt from. With Matuskin dead, your ideal of letting Sakura Tasaka live safely has been fulfilled, so why are you still dragging this broken body into battle? I don't have any special reason. Mitakaraya said slowly as he removed his hood, revealing the horrific face altered by Matuskin. He pointed at his damaged body. My body was transformed into something neither human nor beast by Matuskin over a year ago. Even if I stop now, I won't be able to live on. Rather than rot away in a dark corner until death, I want to do something meaningful at the end of my life. Like participating in the Holy Grail War? Exactly. Mitakaraya nodded and said, I want to repay your kindness in this Holy Grail War. The servant I summoned is Berserker, who has a decent advantage in strength. I will do my utmost to help you in this Holy Grail War. So you're expressing your gratitude for saving Sakura Tasaka by wanting to assist me in the Holy Grail War? Yes. Although I don't know how much I can do, I will do my best to follow your instructions. No need. Contrary to Mitakaraya's expectations, Roy shook his head slightly and decisively rejected his proposal. He then rolled up his sleeve and activated the magic circuits within his body, causing the magic crest obtained from Matuskin to slowly emerge on his arm. What is this? Matuskin's magic crest. This was one of my targets when I attacked the Matu family. Now that I've received my reward, there's no need for you to go this far. But Mitakaraya wanted to say something else, but Roy interrupted him. I was wondering how you managed to find me, but I think I understand now. He slowly walked in front of him, placing his right hand on Mitakaraya's shoulder. As the magic circuits began to operate, a faint blue magic power radiated, and the crest worms within Mitakaraya began to react intensely to the light. The crest worms of the Mita family were linked to the magic crests, and Matukaraya followed that sensation to find him. Ugh! An unexpected discomfort deep within his body caused Matukaraya's complexion to change dramatically. The intense pain in his stomach made it unbearable, and he suddenly collapsed to the ground. As a servant, the Dark Knight was the first to sense the discomfort in his master's body and rushed out from the shadows. Meanwhile, the Count, hiding in another shadow, acted with equal swiftness. Seeing the Dark Knight rush out, he moved immediately, bursting forth with black electricity coursing through his body. Taking advantage of Berserker's moment of inattention, he kicked him aside. With the Count's interruption, Berserker, already volatile, could not hold back. With a roar, he charged at the Count. Krahahaha. Is this your anger? The Black Knight, burdened with countless grudges and curses. I can indeed feel your anger and sorrow, but against me, the vengeful spirit, that's still far from enough. Let me see your strength. Berserker, stop. Caster, come back. Seeing the two men poised for confrontation, Matukaraya, kneeling on the ground, quickly raised his hand and shouted towards the Dark Knight, while Roy also called to the Count, halting the situation from escalating further. The Berserker responded but obeyed the command, silently retreating into the shadows. Humphrey, you run fast. The Count sneered, rising to stand next to Roy, remaining vigilant of their surroundings. Ugh! Accompanied by the turmoil within his body, the crest worms inside Matukaraya began to act violently under Roy's guidance, ultimately forcing him to expel them in large quantities from his mouth. Seeing Matukaraya collapsed on the ground, vomiting out clusters of white crest worms, Roy initially managed to hold it together, but the sight of so much disgusting material made him feel queasy, triggering his own fear of dense clusters. After an unknown duration of retching, apart from the worms occupying the main organs, most of the crest worms implanted in Matukaraya's body were finally expelled under Roy's guidance. Although not completely resolved, the transformation that had taken nearly a year had already turned Matukaraya into something neither human nor beast. Now, the crest worms were tied to his life. Even though Roy gained control over the crest worms in Matukaraya's body after obtaining his magic crest, there was no way to resolve the crest worms while simultaneously ensuring Matukaraya's survival. Killing someone is easy, but saving someone is difficult as hell. However, he had helped Matukaraya clear a portion of the crest worms to alleviate the burden on his body. At the very least, if Matukaraya withdrew now, he could still live for another 20 years, but if he insisted on fighting, whether he could survive through the Fourth War remained uncertain. He had done all he could, the rest depended on their choices. I've helped you clear out most of the worms in your body. If you want to live, then obediently withdraw from the Holy Grail War and find a quiet city to spend the rest of your life. You. Don't rush, let me finish. Roy looks at the barely conscious Matukaraya on the ground. You might think I'm hypocritical, believing that I killed Matuskan for your family's magic crest yet refuse to accept your gratitude. If that's how you want to think, then go ahead, although I'm not a good person, I can't let someone who's barely hanging on fight for me. Your body doesn't allow you to recklessly push yourself. Are you pitying me? Matukaraya revealed a look of surprise. This isn't pity, it's respect. It's respect for the choices you make. Whether you choose to leave now or continue participating in the Holy Grail War, how you proceed is entirely up to you. I hope you won't make a choice that you'll regret later. Really? Respect, huh? I haven't heard that word in a long time. Turning to the side, Matukaraya relaxed on the ground, a rare look of ease crossing his face. Someone like me actually deserves respect? But this feeling isn't bad at all. However, After a moment of wistfulness, Matukaraya snapped back to reality, wanting to say something else, only to find that Roy had already left. Where did he go? Berserker, when did they leave? Forget it, let's pretend I didn't ask. A few days later. The Holy Grail War, huh? Walking through Fuyuki City, several pale blue butterflies completed their reconnaissance of the area and slowly landed back in Roy's hand. Gently touching the butterflies with his fingertips, Roy received the feedback from the scouting familiars in his mind and shook his head slightly. Nothing here either. Roy had been feeling restless these past few days. The reason was simple, the Holy Grail War was about to start, and while Garrett Suguamiya and Kenneth should have already arrived in Fuyuki and summoned their servants, he was stuck on the most critical step. If he didn't eliminate Rinasakryuu soon, he would definitely be in deep trouble once the Holy Grail War began. Currently, the church regarded him as the seventh master, and his servant would be considered caster. However, if Rinasuk also appeared, it would lead to the existence of two casters, creating a situation of genuine and false casters. Yet, he was in plain sight while Rinasuk lurked in the shadows. By the time, when the Gilde the race unleashed the sea demon to kill indiscriminately, The other masters wouldn't think of the hidden caster but would instinctively place all blame on him and the Count. Even if he managed to drag Gilles de Rais out, then his identity would be exposed, and they would fall into a truly passive position. Thus, both Renesec and Gilles de Rais had to be dealt with before the Holy Grail War started. However, that kid was indeed a habitual criminal with 37 incidents of indiscriminate murder in Japan, and his methods of concealment were quite impressive. Moreover, with his familiars not producing much information, it wouldn't be easy to track him down in Fuuki City within a short period. But what he possessed was not just magecraft. The Count had been out gathering information for a while, so he should have some intel by now. Soon, Roy walked into a cafe, found a quiet spot, casually ordered 2 cups of coffee, and dismissed the waiter. Then, he took out a phone from his pocket and ripped off a piece of paper. After a moment, the table shook slightly, and the Count's figure slowly materialized on the chair in front of him. Seeing that the Count had returned, Roy nodded at him and asked, "Did you find his whereabouts?" "Of course, this is a piece of cake for me. Just a despicable killer, how could he possibly evade my pursuit from the depths of hell?" Krahahaha. Alright, I know you're the best, but there are a lot of people around. Can you please keep it down? The sudden burst of laughter caught Roy off guard, and he felt the strange gazes of those around him, prompting him to call a halt to the Count. He noticed the waiter eyeing them and suspected that if the Count hadn't looked so intimidating, the waiter would have already come over to intervene. "Humphrey, master, you really are as boring as ever." As he spoke, the Count handed over a piece of paper containing the address of a residential area he had investigated. His real name is Renesec Ryu. He has orange hair, enjoys horror and slasher films, and his favorite animal is the leopard. He has no residency in Fuuki City and is an outsider. Based on the information you provided, I infiltrated the Fuuki City police station and checked the recent surveillance footage. I can roughly determine that he is hiding near this residential area. Your familiar can't cover the entire Fuuki City, but narrowing it down to this area shouldn't be a problem, right, master? Of course, I'll send my familiar over shortly. Hearing this, Roy smiled, stood up, and nodded at the Count. "Let's go, Count. We need to have a nice chat with our killer friend." "As you wish, my master. I'm already looking forward to the killer's panicked expression when the truth is revealed." Krahahaha. With demonic laughter accompanying them, the two quickly left the cafe. Chapter 13. The demise of the killer. Renesec Ryu was feeling a bit restless. His art was so ahead of its time and so perfect that it left him feeling disconnected from ordinary people. Inside the cinema, a large silver screen was playing her favorite violent B movie, and while he was originally immersed in the art of killing, the loud voices around him started to annoy him. "Ah! That scene just now was terrifying. Yeah, the bloody and gory scenes are disgusting. It's really not worth it to watch such a freaky movie. Can anyone actually like a film this horrifying?" Listening to the comments around him, Renesec felt irritated. He quietly complained while coldly staring at the backs of a few couples leaving midway through the movie. Clearly, this film filled with blood and flying limbs is one of the few precious artworks in this world. Why don't people understand that? It's really frustrating. After complaining for a while, Renesec took note of the loudest voices in front of him, feeling an irresistible impulse rising within him. He wanted to pull out his dagger and stab them fiercely in the neck, to peel back their skin and personally extract their entrails, using their blood to create the most beautiful artwork on the clean floor. Such thoughts filled his mind, but Renesec Ryu suppressed them, shaking his head heavily to stifle his impulse. Such crude murder could hardly be called good art. True art could only begin once everything was prepared. Without understanding their backgrounds and relationships, taking rash action would ruin the aesthetic of the art. This kind of impulsive killing could only be deemed second-rate. Only a carefully planned and meticulously detailed killing could be the most cool art. Although Renesec Ryu was a wandering killer at will, a murderer who had committed over 30 crimes in Japan without being caught must have his own logic. Each murder had to go through prior scouting and polishing, carefully preparing for them and arranging the most suitable death, then fully immersing himself in the joy of killing them. Dissecting them in front of their eyes, using their tragic screams to compose the best artistic melody. This was the art that Renesec Ryu pursued. Tonight was also a crucial night. He had already selected his target. After several days of scouting, he could finally compose another chapter of art. He touched the human skin grimoire in his pocket, and Renesec Ryu's breath became somewhat hurried. This time it should work, right? After trying so many times, that amusing Mr. Demon should respond to me now. This will be the third time. Even a demon with such a nasty temperament will feel my sincere heart and my thirst for art after receiving so many offerings, right? He thought again of the kind-hearted neighbor woman who had taken him in with her gentle disposition, and a smile unconsciously appeared on Renesec Ryu's lips. What a rare angel she was, thank you for your kindness. As a repayment for this kindness, I will make you my most beautiful artwork. With a smile on his lips, his fingers never stopped, repeatedly sketching in the air the outline of the summoning array from the grimoire, pondering which part's blood pigment would be used to create this artwork. Meanwhile, several pale blue butterflies flew out from the ventilation shaft of the cinema and returned to Roy's hand. In this area, Roy, releasing his familiars, received feedback, and a smile appeared on his lips. I found him. Og. What is this? Returning to the long-lost rental apartment, Rinazuk Ryu wore a smile as he pressed the doorbell of his neighbor's house. He knew that the woman lived alone, and all he needed to do was take advantage of her not resting and stab her in the neck to easily finish it. He had performed this operation more than 10 times, becoming quite skilled at it. Now, he could hardly wait to turn this kind-hearted woman into art and then present it to that interesting demon. Following the plan, Rinazuk prepared to knock on the door, holding a very sharp small knife in his left hand, ready to act. Just as he was about to knock, he heard the door make a click sound. The door swung open from the inside, revealing the entrance of the room. Not locked? Seeing the door wide open, Rinazuk felt a bit confused. After surveying the scene in the room, he suddenly felt a sense of unease and began to hesitate about whether to go in. Aren't you coming in to take a look? While he was pondering, a male voice suddenly startled him. Without thinking, he quickly pulled out the small knife and thrust it toward the source of the voice behind him. With a stab, the sound instantly ceased. When he turned around, Rinazuk broke into a cold sweat. Before him, several light blue butterflies fluttered and then slowly formed into the shape of a young man, looking quite extravagant. You bastard! Arg. In his panic, Rinazuk didn't even have time to ask a question before his knife was snatched away by Roy, who then swiftly stabbed him hard in the stomach with it. Ugh! The intense pain in his abdomen rendered Rinazuk speechless. Since you don't want to come in, I'll have to invite you inside. Roy cast a cold glance at him and then grabbed Rinazuk's hair, dragging the incapacitated killer into the house. What are you? It's not your turn to ask questions yet. Gasping unevenly, Rinazuk tried to inquire further, but Roy clearly ignored him. Blood splattered onto the floor as he raised his hand and delivered another stab to the scum's abdomen. What are you doing? Og. With a crunch, Roy, not wanting to continue hearing Rinazuk's wails, crushed his jaw with one swift motion, preventing him from speaking further. Then, he searched Rinazuk's body and pulled out the eerie human skin spellbook, kicking Rinazuk to the center of the room. Count, get ready. When that guy is summoned, attack directly without giving him a chance to react. Krahahaha. Don't worry, Master, I promise to take him down in the shortest time possible. Okay, I'll leave it to you then, Count. After speaking, Roy took a brush from his pocket, dipped it in Rinazuk's blood as paint, and began to draw the magic circle from the book. He then threw both the human skin book and Rinazuk into the mix, being kind-hearted enough to help Rinazuk summon the demon he longed for. Accompanied by the incantation of the summoning spell, the light erupting from the summoning circle grew increasingly bright, and the flowing magical power responded to the bright red mark on Rinazuk's hand, confirming that a connection had indeed been established. The seventh servant, Castor, officially made his appearance. However, at your invitation, I have come. I am the unworthy Gilles de Race. From now on, I shall serve you faithfully. Upon hearing the sadistic voice of Gilles de Race, Roy furrowed his brow, of course not intending to give Gilles de Race a chance to react. Swish. With a swift motion, he plunged the small knife directly into Rinazuk's neck, decisively ending his life. Og. Feeling the connection to his master suddenly sever, the freshly summoned Gilles de Race went mad, clutching his head and screaming. What's happening? You killed him. You actually killed my master. I will punish you, punish you. I will make you the food for the sea demons. Quiet down, don't disturb the peace, you stinking octopus. With a quick step, the Count, enveloped in burning black flames, slapped Gilles de Race on the head, igniting him instantly. Clearly caught off guard by the sudden attack from this master-servant duo, Gilles de Race, who had just been summoned and had yet to grasp the situation, was bewildered. I will kill you. In an instant, Gilles de Race, ignited by the pitch-black flames, unleashed his prized noble phantasm, raising his hand to summon countless sea demon tentacles to attack Roy, intending to tear this tormentor who had made him suffer so miserably into pieces. Count, take him down as quickly as possible, we need to retreat. Roy's figure retreated toward the door, his calm voice resonating in the room, signaling the end of this battle. Krahahaha. As you wish, my master. I'll deal with this octopus right away. After his maniacal laughter, the dark green figure swiftly darted about the cramped room, easily dodging the attacks of the sea demon tentacles. The black light and flames surrounding him increased his speed, making the monsters, which could easily take a warrior's life outside, appear as slow as snails to him. Damn it. Enduring the intense pain from the dark flames, Gilles de Rais frantically flipped through the Pilates spellbook, seeking to summon more sea demons to crush this green figure into pieces. But he wouldn't get that chance. In battles between the strong, the outcome is often decided in an instant. In just a breath's time, the figure of the King of the Caverns appeared before him, catching him off guard before he could summon the sea demons. In his astonished gaze, a powerful thrust struck his chest, crushing the core within him and severing any emotional ties. The game is over. Clapping his hands, the Count glanced at the now exhausted Gilles de Rais, raised his hand, and delivered a final strike, causing Gilles de Rais to dissipate into nothingness. In such a narrow room, any warrior could easily overpower a caster as feeble as him. For the Count, a fast, high attack, and high evade assassin, it was even more so. Thus, this battle held no surprises. Gilles de Rais's pitiful agility and endurance were meaningless before the Count, who dispatched him effortlessly in just a few exchanges. However, the commotion was rather loud. Seeing the nearly overturned house from their battle, Roy gave a bitter smile and quickly signaled for the Count to flee, not forgetting to have him set a fire to erase any traces before leaving. As for the cleanup, he left that to the church. Chapter 14, The Lord and the Student, February 6, 1994. Clock Tower. On this day, Lord Elmeloy was feeling a bit agitated. Inside a spacious office, Kenneth sat in a classic chair, looking displeased. One hand supported his tilted head while the other rested on the chair, and his right index finger kept tapping on the desk. Standing in front of Kenneth was a young boy, trembling. Watching his teacher, who seemed like he was ready to devour someone, the boy's fragile heart began to race. From the morning, a persistent thud sound hadn't stopped. Waver Velvet. Yes. Professor Kenneth. Kenneth's shout startled Waver, causing him to shiver violently, his body trembling like a short-haired cat with bristling fur. Explain to me why this thing is in your hands. Kenneth rose angrily, picking up a box from the desk. His expression was menacing, and despite the preciousness of its contents, his anger caused him to throw it heavily in front of Waver. Bang! With a loud noise, the antique red wooden box cracked open, revealing a piece of red fabric inside. Hearing a loud sound and feeling Kenneth's piercing gaze, Waver trembled even more. He had just resolved to spread his wings and soar, yet before he could even take off, his teacher had caught him red-handed. In such an awkward situation, Waver had no idea how to explain himself. I can't believe it, I really can't believe it. I, Kenneth, actually have a day where I'm betrayed by my own student. Waver Velvet, you've truly surprised me. Professor, Shut up. Bang. Another loud noise as Kenneth slammed his fist on the desk, causing Waver to swallow his words. Let's not even talk about 2 months ago, when you wrote that utterly foolish, downright whimsical paper. And now, you've stolen my relic and even tried to secretly fly to Japan. If I hadn't been watching you closely, you'd have succeeded in escaping. My dear disciple, the esteemed Lord Elmeloy too, Waver Velvet. Huh? Waver panicked even more upon hearing Kenneth's sarcastic remark, hurriedly waving his hands in an attempt to defend himself. I didn't, I swear. Shut up, you fool. Bang. Feeling the betrayal, Kenneth was humiliated and furious. In his rage, he flipped over his expensive desk, and anyone could see the veins bulging on his forehead. After all the frustrating events he had been dealing with these past few months, Kenneth had clearly forgotten all sense of aristocratic decorum. First, this fool Waver wrote that absurd paper in class, forcing Kenneth to suppress the matter to avoid leaving any lingering problems. But the troubles didn't end there. One day, after reprimanding Waver in his office, Kenneth witnessed a shocking scene as he left. An elderly man with a tall stature and a white beard passed by and addressed Waver with a chilling greeting. Good morning, Lord Elmeloy too. Then, grabbing Waver's hand, the old man enthusiastically said, come quickly and take a look at the new Magic 2 Live developed, the Magical Girl Transformation Device, version 3.0. Wait a second, why are you still this small? And wearing a clock tower student uniform? Who are you? Waver had a bewildered look on his face as he stared at the playful old man, while Kenneth, standing at the door, couldn't contain himself anymore. Hearing this shocking news, he couldn't keep his balance and collapsed to the ground. Huh? You don't recognize me? The old man looked surprised, and then he glanced at Kenneth, who had just walked out of the room. Lemonhead is still alive in this timeline? Could it be that I messed up the timeline? Lord Elmeloy too, hey kid, what year is it in this timeline? 1994. Waver responded, confused, while Kenneth behind him looked as if he had seen a ghost. I see. So I did mess up the timeline. Well then, I'll see you later. I'll go switch timelines now. You work hard, and I'll come find you again in a few years. And so, the magician of the second magic, The one titled the Wizard Marshal, Kisser Zelrech Schwenorg, stormed out, leaving behind two massive messes. From that point on, Kenneth's view of Waver changed drastically, all because of what Zelrech had said. Waver? Elmeloi too. From then on, Kenneth, who hadn't paid much attention to Waver before, began to focus all his attention on him. He wanted to see for himself how this fool, who could write such an outlandish paper, had become Elmeloi too. Under Kenneth's scrutiny, even though Waver had received a relic through the mail, he was immediately caught by Kenneth at the clock tower and dragged into the office, leading to the current situation. Looking at the trembling student before him, Kenneth was even more furious. While Waver was indeed competent in understanding and theorizing about magecraft, was that alone enough to make him Elmeloi too? But what was it about that future Zelrech mentioned? What kind of world line had him passing on the title of Elmeloi to such a third-rate Magus? Professor, I'm just a third-generation Magus. There's no way I could be Elmeloi too. Could it be that the gentleman made a mistake? You think it's ridiculous? Kenneth shot him a fierce glare. Waver nodded repeatedly. I also think it's ridiculous. But that's exactly what Lord Zelrech said that day. You heard it too, didn't you? Since Lord Zelrech called you Elmeloi too, it means that on some world line, you really did become Elmeloi too, you, of all people. On some world line, the fool who wrote that essay, a mere third-generation Magus, actually succeeded in inheriting the position of lecturer of the Department of the Spiritual Evocation, the Lord of the Department of Mineralogy, and the 9th-generation magical legacy of the Elmeloi family, didn't you? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Glancing at Waver, who was still trembling, Kenneth became even more frustrated. Reckless, betraying your master, and even trying to sneak off with the relic to Japan to participate in some magecraft ritual. Do your actions really make you worthy of the title Elmeloi too? If I hadn't sent magical familiars to monitor you in advance, I wouldn't have believed it. My most timid and well-behaved student, Waver, suddenly had such nerve. Or perhaps, in that other world line, it was exactly this boldness that made you Elmeloi too? I didn't, I swear. Waver was on the verge of tears under Kenneth's accusing glare. He didn't know anything about it. He just wanted to prove himself. How did it get this out of hand? You did. Kenneth roared like a furious dragon, but after a while, he slumped back into his chair, exhausted. Rubbing his temples in frustration, Kenneth started to worry about his own future. Since Lord Zelrech had called Waver Elmeloi too, it meant that in some timeline, Waver had indeed inherited his position and had even grown quite close to Lord Zelrech. But what worried him more were the other words Zelrech had spoken, something about Lemonhead still being alive and needing to switch timelines and a few years too early. These words suggested that not only was the timeline where Waver succeeded him not unique, it might even be common. And a few years too early likely meant that Waver might inherit the position of Elmeloi much sooner than expected. Yet, with only a 10-year age difference between them, there should have been no need for him to retire so early. This implied that in the next few years, some unexpected event would force him to step down. The most likely scenario was his own death. As these thoughts raced through his mind, Kenneth felt a cold chill run through his body. His hands and feet went numb, and his heart sank when he saw the relic on the ground. Could it be that he would die in that remote place, Fuiuki City? No, that was absurd. Such a low-level magecraft ritual in the countryside couldn't possibly pose a threat to his life. But considering the shock that Waver had brought him, this seemed like the most plausible outcome. No, this time, he had to take decisive action with full force. I, Kenneth, refuse to die young? Glaring at the relic on the floor and at the trembling Waver, Kenneth slowly stood up, making his decision. He ordered, take that relic and go pack your things. Prepare to depart. Huh? What? It's just a regular magecraft competition. Didn't you want to go before? Now you have the chance. Take that relic and prepare to leave. You'll be my assistant this time. As for Scylla, thinking of his beloved, Kenneth immediately connected her to the future Zelrech had mentioned. There was no way he would bring her into danger, not even a little. This time, he would go alone. He would make it up to her when he returned. And another thing, I care less about that so-called Holy Grail war than I do about Waver Velvet. A mere third-generation Magus. What gives you the right to inherit the Elmeloi name? If you disappoint me in this magecraft ritual, I'll make sure you fully understand what punishment from Elmeloi feels like. Do you understand? Yes, Professor Kenneth. With a resigned sigh, Waver picked up the relic from the ground and hurried out. Only after Waver had left did the irritable Kenneth gradually calm down. He then dialed the ancient telephone in his office, beginning his preparations. This is Lord Kenneth. Connect me to the British Museum. I need to rent some of their finest relics. Also, I'll need. Chapter 15, the Magus and the Martyr Its Flowers. This was a paradise that seemed to exist only in fairy tales. The air was fragrant, the sunlight warm, and countless pink petals swirled in the air, surrounding the lost intruder. The dream felt real yet illusory, a mix of both. Walking amidst the fluttering petals made it impossible to tell whether this was fantasy or reality. In this ethereal scene, like a mirage, Roy wandered, half-conscious. Guided by a vague feeling, he began to ascend the smooth marble steps of the towering structure before him. "Come closer, come. Come." The voice in the dream echoed faintly through the layers of petals, and Roy felt himself drawing ever nearer to its source. At last, he was just one step away. "Oh, brave young one, you are so close to touching the legendary miracle." Who was speaking to him? The voice and these petals felt strangely familiar, but he couldn't recall them. He couldn't remember. Lost in the depths of this dream, his head felt heavy, making it impossible to think. He could only rely on instinct, moving forward, following the voice. As the voice grew nearer and nearer, so too did the distance to the top of the tower shrink. Finally, just as he was about to touch the curtain and cross through the illusion, what he saw was... Kra-ha-ha-ha-ha. To indulge in the falsehoods of a dream is not your calling, my accomplice. Wake up, open your eyes. There is something far more important for you to do now. Pay no heed to the intrusion of this deceitful dream. Remember, you are already in the midst of a war. The familiar voice, the arrogant laughter, and the unmistakable sense of familiarity jolted him awake. In the instant when black flames engulfed the sea of flowers, the dream shattered. The intense heat of the blazing black fire transformed the tranquil flower field into a hellscape in an instant. And with that, the gentle whispers of the flower-like spirits in the dream disappeared, just like the burning flowers, completely vanishing from sight. In a deeper layer of the dream, the black flames ignited the illusion around them, following the petals. A figure from hell stood amidst the flying sea of flowers, glaring menacingly at the presence before him. To sneak into someone's dream when they least expect it, like a parasite, is quite fitting for your role, incubus. But what are you trying to do? Should I take this as a declaration of war? Oh my, as expected, you saw through me, didn't you? What a headache. I thought I was being quite discreet. At the very least, it should have taken you a while longer. Atop the tower, Merlin slowly opened his eyes, a troubled look on his face as he gazed at the unexpected visitor. He, the distinguished Magus of flowers, an incubus, was being chased out of a dream. How embarrassing. If Morgan and Vivian were to hear about this, they'd surely mock him for quite some time. However, if the one doing the chasing was none other than the infamous Vengeance Demon, it was a little easier to accept. Your repugnant scent. No matter how deeply hidden in a dream, I can still detect it. Don't underestimate an Avenger's sense of smell. TCH, it's only because your abilities just happen to counter mine. Talking big, aren't you? I'm still have a shot at becoming Grand Caster, you know. Do you wish to die? The Count's golden eyes flashed fiercely, and the surrounding illusion began to dissolve into flames. He glanced indifferently at Merlin. Unless you give me a good reason, it'll be hard to let you leave today. Oh, come on now. I didn't plan to do anything bad to him. Why so agitated? Besides, you can't kill me in a dream anyway, right? But I can make it hurt. Ahaha, let's not go that far. Getting burned by your flames is no laughing matter. Relax, I only want him to help me with a small task. And I'll definitely give him ample compensation. He won't lose out. What are you planning? The Count stared coldly at him. Nothing much. It's just that this Holy Grail war is different from the usual monotonous ones. I'm a little curious. After all, it's not every day you get to see a foreigner and an Avenger together, plus there's a ruler in the mix. A foreigner who seems to have seen the entirety of the Holy Grail war, two forces like Avenger and ruler that appeared to counter Calamity. This Grail war is shaping up to be quite the spectacle. Merlin shrugged, smiling as he spoke. Don't look at me like that. The Grail war involves my king, after all. Naturally, I'll keep a close eye on it. It's perfectly reasonable to follow the drama over thousands of battles, right? Although I've witnessed countless Grail wars across the world, this one, with so many variables, is a first for me. The foreigner seems to be a soul from some foreign realm that has descended into this world. As for you, Avenger, you've been forcibly bound by the counterforce to restrain two malignant elements. But, you two seem to be getting along quite well. There's at least some trust between you. However, how long will you both keep your secrets from each other? Ruler has already arrived in Fuiuki City. His identity this time is likely both a contestant and a referee, bending the rules. You've known about this for some time, haven't you? You've experienced it, even committed some pretty outrageous acts. But you haven't told your master. Similarly, your master is aware of the general course of the Grail War, yet hasn't fully disclosed the truth to you. You both like keeping secrets, don't you? Merlin grinned mischievously at the Count of Monte Cristo. Whatever. With the way you two act, you're better off dealing with it on your own. I just think this Grail War is a bit special and want to stir things up. But, I do suggest you warn your master sooner rather than later. Make him realize that this Holy Grail War is vastly different from the systematic ones of the past, and that it diverges greatly from the path in his memory. Otherwise, you're both in for a rude awakening. My request is simple. Since you've been sent by the counterforce to deal with the unsettling elements in this Grail War that could threaten the world, I'd like you to also keep an eye on the matter of the sword's sheath for me. As payment, I'll guide your master's magic in the dream. Though I'm more skilled in swordsmanship, I'm sure I can train a modern Magus to a decent level. Merlin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. After all, he was quite intrigued by the nature of that foreigner's existence. So, what do you think? Interested in making a deal? With my help, his progress will be rapid. Fuyuki City. Church. The elderly priest Kotamin Rizai stood before a massive cross, bathed in the moonlight that streamed through the stained glass windows above. All the masters participating in the Holy Grail War are now converging on Fuyuki City. Kotamin Kairai, the robust, middle-aged priest standing below, addressed his father who was at the altar. I've already dispatched assassin to monitor the entire city. They will gather information on any developments in the Holy Grail War immediately. Is that so? Kotamin Rizai nodded in approval, gazing at Kairai. You've done well, Kairai. Everything is proceeding as planned. Just follow your teacher's instructions. Even though the church has been given the responsibility to oversee the Holy Grail War, you are also a participant in this war, as well as Tasaka Tokiomi's disciple. So following your teacher's directions won't violate the rules. This Holy Grail War should bring an end to the generations-long magical ritual. We will do everything in our power to maintain the secrecy of the mystics. Kotamin Rizai turned his gaze to the giant cross before him, bowing slightly. The cross in his hand gleamed faintly. The Holy Church, a mysterious organization in the hidden world, held a status equal to the Mages Association's clock tower. However, the church's purpose was not the pursuit of the root like Magus, but rather the eradication of heresy and the preservation of mystery. From its inception, the Holy Grail War had shown signs of extreme instability, even threatening to expose those very mysteries. Thus, it was natural for the Holy Church to assume the role of overseer for the Grail War. Even the founding three families, in the face of such a colossal entity within the hidden world, could not oppose the church's position of authority. The best testament to the church's overwhelming power was the command seals. While each master possessed only 3, the church, as the overseer, controlled dozens. This was the primary safeguard ensuring stability and secrecy. Yes, Father Rizai, upholding secrecy and peace while providing salvation to humanity. This is the mission bestowed upon us by the Lord. It is the creed every executor must abide by. Footsteps echoed. And a gentle voice followed. Kotamin Kairai furrowed his brow slightly and turned his head. He saw a boy standing at the door, smiling at him. The boy was small in stature, draped in a dark red robe, a silver cross hanging from his chest. In his right hand, he held a black-covered book, and his slightly disheveled white hair flared out. Though he appeared young, his smile was something Kairai had never seen before. It was pure, filled with confidence and warmth, and just looking at it gave one a sense of serenity. You are Shiru, I presume? Yes, it's nice to meet you, my brother. The boy greeted Kotamin Kairai. Shiru Kotamin. This was someone who had abruptly entered Kairai's life. Since childhood, he had heard his father, Rizai, mention this brother he had never met. But for over a decade, they had never crossed paths. Regarding this brother, his father had always shown an unusual reverence. It was odd. And it made Kairai feel quite uneasy. Now, upon finally meeting face to face, he began to understand his father's feelings. This boy gave off an unsettling aura. Not like a normal human but more akin to a saint or some transcendent being. As a warrior, Kairai's instincts also detected the formidable power hidden within his brother's slender frame. Vigilance. Kairai regarded this brother with utmost caution. So, Shiru, you've came to Fuyuki City. Yes, father, I've returned. Good. You've come at the right time. Rizai glanced at Kairai before continuing. Kairai, return to your teacher now. I have some matters to discuss privately with Shiru. I understand. Without questioning the reason, Kairai maintained his stern expression and promptly left the church. As he stepped out the door, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. The unsettling feeling had vanished the moment he left the chapel. Assassin. What is it, master? Do you need us to do something? Several shadowy figures appeared from the night, kneeling before Kairai. His eyes remained calm, but there was a slight shift in his gaze. Keep a closer watch on the church. Understood. The shadows nodded and then dispersed. Inside the chapel, after sensing Kairi's departure, Shiru slowly lifted his gaze. Looking at Kotamin Rai's eye before him, he couldn't help but sigh. The Holy Grail War, huh? Such a familiar magical ritual. It's quite nostalgic. However, this time, I won't fail again. As you wish, O noble martyr. Kotamin Rai's eye replied, bowing slightly as he withdrew his gaze. I will now transfer the role of overseer to you and then depart. I hope you achieve redemption. Very well. Thank you for your assistance all this time, Master. May the Lord bless you. The Lord will protect his followers. I firmly believe in this. And I shall make sure that the Lord's miracle, his kingdom, the ideal kingdom of God, descends upon this world. Chapter 16. First night annoyed, very annoyed, extremely annoyed. This was how he felt at the moment. On the streets of Fuyuki City, hidden in an alley, Garrett Suguemiya extinguished the cigarette in his hand, glanced up at the deep night sky, and then heavily exhaled a cloud of smoke. Although he had anticipated from the start that his compatibility with this particular king might be problematic when summoning, the actual dissonance upon summoning her was far more extreme than he had imagined. The great king of knights, who left a significant mark in Celtic mythology's British chapter, was actually a woman. This made Garrett Sugu feel deceived. The rigid knightly demeanor, the upright knightly spirit. There was no doubt this servant would never agree with his combat methods. From the very first moment of summoning her, he had felt deeply disappointed with his servant. However, this disappointment wasn't due to her strength. After all, a legendary hero like King Arthur, renowned in mythology, certainly wouldn't be weak. Rather, he simply couldn't see any compatibility between himself and this king. A master and servant with no compatibility. Forget about cooperating, they would only hinder each other in battle. Therefore, everything would have to rely on himself. King Arthur would merely serve as a support to hold off other masters' servants, while he would be the one to determine the outcome of the battle. After all, in the Holy Grail War, the true target was not just the servants. Targeting the vulnerable masters was undoubtedly the most effective strategy. Ring. 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 On the beach of Fuyuki, a white-haired beauty strolled leisurely under the moonlight, walking along the shore. This was the first time she had ever seen the sea, having never left the ancient castle of ice and snow before. Everything in the outside world seemed so new to her. Like a blank sheet of paper, pure and innocent, she experienced true freedom for the first time in this unfamiliar city, her face adorned with the most sincere smile. Iris Veil. Watching that flawless, beautiful smile, Artoria, who followed closely behind, found herself momentarily lost in thought. Such a pure and innocent smile stirred something within her, bringing back memories of her own past. Was the young Artoria as beautiful and pure as Iris Veil back then? Just as she was enjoying this peaceful moment, Saber's gaze suddenly sharpened, as if sensing something, and she turned her head in a specific direction. The faint aura of her blue energy subtly radiated around her. What's wrong, Saber? Sensing the energy emanating from Saber, the nearby Iris Veil asked curiously. A servant is inviting me to come. No, more accurately, he's inviting all the servants in this city. Iris Veil, should we go check it out? Huh? Wait a moment, Saber, let me ask Garrett Sugu first. Alright. At that moment, the phone in her pocket began to ring. She quickly answered it. After a brief, hushed conversation, Iris Veil nodded slightly and turned to the knightly figure of King Arthur beside her, saying. Garrett Sugu said he also sensed the magical power emanating outward. He wants us to go to the port for the battle. He'll be there shortly. Understood. So that direction leads to the port? Got it. Iris Veil, let's go. Receiving her master's command, Artoria nodded and, like a gentle knight, took Iris Veil's hand, guiding and protecting her temporary master, Iris Veil, as they headed toward the battleground. At the edge of Fuyuki's port area, in the warehouse district. The moonlight was as bright as frost, and a man with long golden hair stood there holding a spear. He unleashed his magical energy without reservation, letting his presence radiate out like a fisherman casting a line, luring other servants to take the bait. Finally, some changes are happening on the battlefield. Under the oppressive night sky, a rugged man with short red hair and muscles straining against his clothes stood proudly on a massive steel bridge in Fuyuki City, gazing into the distance at the unfolding battle. His cloak billowed in the night wind. The man stroked the beard on his chin, his eyes wide as he intently observed the battle scene, carefully watching the blue-skirted, golden-haired girl who was facing off against the golden-haired spearmen near the containers. Ah, rider, this is too high. Put me down, please. Meanwhile, the overlooked waver trembled in the cold wind, glancing down at the flowing river and the busy vehicles below, his legs shaking uncontrollably. Little brat, as my master, You can't be this timid. Look at your teacher, he uses himself as bait to draw out all potential enemies. You should learn that courage and confidence. Huh? What nonsense are you talking about? Professor Kenneth is the Lord of the Clock Tower, a genius known as a prodigy in the magical world. How could I possibly compare to him? Besides, if we expose ourselves like this, won't it cause trouble? Shouldn't the Holy Grail War be fought in secrecy for greater advantage? Isn't revealing ourselves too reckless? Looking at his little master, who was trembling on the steel beam, the King of Conquerors sighed and summoned his divine chariot, taking Waver under his arm and lifting him up. Speaking such downcast words before a battle is a taboo, little master. Your teacher is formidable, but don't forget, he will be our enemy after we deal with the others. As my master, Alexander the Great, you must not show weakness. Even if you say that, I still can't win against Professor Kenneth. Seeing the King of Conquerors' serious expression, Waver sighed helplessly. In terms of magical prowess and aptitude, we are far too apart. How could I possibly defeat Professor Kenneth? And didn't we form an alliance? Professor Kenneth wouldn't attack us, right? Fool, the Holy Grail War is still a war. Only one victor can emerge. Even if we are allies now, after dealing with the other masters and servants, we will still become enemies. So you must be prepared in advance, understand? Little master. Can I really challenge Professor Kenneth? And I've told you so many times, just call me master. Don't add a little in front of it. Amidst Waver's frustrated reprimand, the King of Conquerors stroked his bearded chin and thought for a moment before saying, however, if you think about it carefully, your teacher is quite cautious. While he has Lancer exposed to lure out other opponents, your teacher himself remains well hidden. His aim is to stage a show, luring out other masters and servants as much as possible, bringing the hidden into the open. However, this indeed requires enough confidence and bravery. With a slight misstep, he could easily be overwhelmed by many servants. Doesn't that mean Professor Kenneth is in a dangerous position right now? Not necessarily, the Golden Lancer he summoned is a rare hero and won't be so easily defeated. And don't forget, we've established an alliance with your teacher. Even if things go awry, isn't his king here? In fact, I've been eager to join in. Seeing them fighting so fiercely, witnessing the clash of heroes from different eras, this king's heart for conquest cannot be contained, ha ha ha. As he spoke, the King of Conquerors burst into a wide grin and leaped onto his noble phantasm, the Gordius wheel. Huh? Isn't Professor Kenneth letting us observe here? Ryder, what are you doing? Ha 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 ha. Amid Waver's shocked cry, the King of Conquerors laughed heartily, grabbing the reins of his chariot and shouting, let's go. Regardless, little master, we're joining the fray. Seeing them battle so fiercely, I can't hold back any longer. Let's go. Join this grand gathering with this king. No. Ryder, we'll definitely get scolded by Professor Kenneth. You idiot. Ha ha ha. So what? This king's heart for conquest knows no bounds. We'll deal with the aftermath when it comes. After a bout of laughter, the King of Conquerors pulled the reins, and with a sharp crack of the whip, his noble phantasm, the Gordius wheel, roared to life, illuminating the night with a bluish arc of electricity. Fuiuki City Port. Compared to the laughter and chatter coming from the King of Conquerors, this place was evidently much livelier, with the fierce clashes of magical spears and holy swords echoing throughout. Bathed in the cool moonlight, a long-haired handsome man threw his golden hair back, revealing a stunning face that could drive any woman mad with desire. With a casual wave of his uniquely designed spear, resembling a magical wand, he commanded a continuous flow of water, effortlessly countering the fierce onslaught from Saber. The waves and starlight danced together under the night sky. Quite an intense aura of battle. I believe you must be a seasoned warrior. Though you have concealed your weapon, I know you are the Saber of this Holy Grail War. Not necessarily, you can't confirm my weapon. I might actually be Lancer or Archer. Upon hearing this, Artoria remained unfazed, channeling more magical energy as she summoned a blue wind to slash toward her enemy. You jest. Lancer smiled slightly and once again swung his spear, guiding the water to deflect Saber's attack. Observing Artoria's figure in the moonlight, the golden-haired man bit his thumb and continued speaking. I have great confidence in my discernment. This is the aura of the planet's power. Saber, the planet's power, and the signature weapon that must be concealed. I see. Now I understand. With a sudden flash of insight, Lancer had unraveled Saber's secret. So you are the famous King Arthur. I didn't expect you to be a woman. Hearing her secret revealed, Artoria felt no need to continue hiding and unleashed her magical energy, dispersing the blue wind on her sword to reveal its true form. So what if I'm a woman? Can't King Arthur be a woman? Unknown hero, please do not underestimate your opponent due to gender. Before being a woman, I am still a knight and a king. I am King Arthur. Saber. Seeing Saber's true name easily recognized by her opponent, Iris Veal felt a twinge of worry from her position behind. Don't worry, Iris Veal. Just stay a bit further away, I'm going to fight seriously now. The Holy Sword, Excalibur. Indeed, you are the genuine King Arthur. I'm just a little surprised, I mean no disrespect, as such a sharp sword cannot tolerate my arrogance. Exactly. The fact that you could discern my class and identity in such a brief encounter shows your remarkable insight. I suspect you must possess some kind of intelligence-based noble phantasm. With your exceptional skill, almost cursed beauty, and this extraordinary magical spear, considering the legends, your true name must be Diarmid, right? Ah. Upon hearing that familiar name, the golden-haired man's face twisted slightly in reaction. He then awkwardly yet politely smiled, raised his spear to perform a flourish, and then attacked with lightning speed. As the spear struck down, Artoria couldn't help but feel as if it carried a hint of anger. While I admire King Arthur, I will not reveal my true name before battle. If you want to know the truth, come and experience it for yourself. Chapter 17 Fateful encounter. A man in a black trench coat endured the cold night wind, carefully crouching on a steel container, holding his breath and concentrating, afraid to make a sound. However, the shocking scene before him rendered him speechless, his eyes wide with astonishment, unable to regain his composure for a long time. This is the servant. The reappearance of those ancient heroes. Although he had already read the records of past Holy Grail wars from the Innsburn family, Emiyagiritsugu had mentally prepared himself for the existence of servants, which transcended current common knowledge. Yet, when he truly witnessed the battles between these heroes across time, he realized he had underestimated them. Wielding holy swords and commanding raging winds, manipulating water with magical spears, and displaying extraordinary martial skills. This kind of battle, only recorded in the mythological texts, was now unfolding right before him. His trump card, Origin Bullet, Time Alter, facing these transcendent beings, all he could do was laugh it off. He was gradually understanding the meaning behind the head of the Innsburn family's advice, only a servant can defeat a servant. Do not act impulsively. Initially, he thought that with these two powerful weapons, even if he couldn't defeat these heroes, he could at least hold them off for a few rounds. But now, realizing the reality, he found his previous thoughts utterly laughable. Putting aside the Arthur he had summoned, looking at the strength displayed by the golden-haired man across from him, he felt he would definitely not last 2 moves against him before being pierced by that magical spear. He might as well abandon the ridiculous notion of defeating a servant. With that in mind, Emiyagiritsugu set up his sniper rifle and thermal scope to search for the presence of other Magus nearby. Though he couldn't defeat a servant, it didn't mean he couldn't take down other Magus. He was called the Magus Killer for a reason. The special bullets equipped in his gun were the nemesis of all Magus. Origin bullets. These bullets had the ability to cause chaos and riot in the magic circuits of a Magus when they activated their magecraft. If a Magus were to use magecraft after being hit by an Origin bullet, they would be beyond saving. This was also his ultimate weapon, prepared to crush all those arrogant traditional Magus. Thinking this, Emiyagiritsugu no longer paid attention to the 2 battling servants below and began to focus on locating Lancer's master. Although the golden-haired Lancer's master had yet to reveal himself, he was certain that the master would be hiding nearby, observing the battle, ready to command and use magecraft for support. Both the servants and their masters would engage in contact over a short period. There couldn't be an absolutely harmonious bond between any master and servant. As long as the master had doubts about the servant, they would undoubtedly hide nearby, just as he thought. Over a long lifetime, he knew that those naturally proud and suspicious Magus would never easily entrust the initiative to their servants, so he must be here. Although this reasoning was indeed valid, the current situation was somewhat different from what Emiyagiritsugu had anticipated. Having been forewarned of possible misfortune by Lords Elricht, Kenneth would not allow his pride to continue influencing him. He was extremely cautious. Not only had he left his fiancée, who was supposed to follow him, in the clock tower, but he had also borrowed a superior relic from the British Museum, summoning a legendary hero that rivaled Alexander and perhaps even surpassed him, Fian Macumhale. To ensure everything was foolproof, he had also researched the participants in this Holy Grail war in advance and made the appropriate preparations. One could say that he was now completely composed. Moreover, he wouldn't naively think that he understood combat better than the battle-hardened heroes. He was just a Magus, not a warrior. Therefore, he needed Fian to fight to his fullest potential. Kenneth also planned to use the rigid thinking of other masters for a surprise attack, launching a deadly strike against those masters. Let the ambushers truly feel the terror possessed by a well-prepared ruler. Don't underestimate Kenneth. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind, who is the hunter, and who is the prey. This would soon be revealed. From his hidden position, Kenneth was secretly observing the situation on site through a special familiar. Seeing Fian recognize King Arthur's true name at first glance and gain the upper hand in battle, he nodded in satisfaction, praising him internally. As expected, he was a descendant of the Celtic god of war, Nuada, the leader of the Fianna Knights of Glory. Being able to identify King Arthur's true name in such a short time and suppress her was a testament to his strength and insight, making him a servant worthy of Kenneth. With this in mind, he continued to issue commands to Fian. Show some real skill and test Saber's abilities. Ideally, you should seriously injure her or force her to retreat. Waver and Ryder are still waiting for support outside, so don't worry about the other servants attacking. Understood. Fian responded, continuing to increase his magical energy. Meanwhile, the oblivious Emiya Giritsugu climbed slightly along the container, calmly analyzing the situation around him. He then activated his communicator to Mia, instructing her to be on the lookout for the presence of other masters or servants. Next, he surveyed the surrounding terrain. Everywhere were steel containers, which indeed provided excellent hiding spots. However, the times have changed for Magus. With this thought, Emiya Giritsugu directed his gaze several dozen meters away, pulling a night vision device from his coat, and began searching for other masters along the traces of the steel containers. Very good, just as I thought. As expected, the night vision device detected the heat signature of a humanoid figure in a high spot formed by stacked containers. Even with their concealment magecraft, those old-fashioned Magus had never considered that someone could use high-tech devices like night vision goggles during the Holy Grail War. Even if they used magecraft to hide their tracks, they hadn't dealt with the heat signature. Several hundred meters away, the night vision device displayed a warm silhouette outlined in red and orange. Emiya Giritsugu couldn't help but smile, beginning to mock the Magus' stupidity in his heart. Believing themselves noble and overly reliant on concealment magecraft, they had no understanding of the changes in the times. If he wasn't mistaken, that Magus must have been using illusion magecraft or presence suppression to dare to appear so brazenly here. However, magecraft could not eliminate one's heat signature from devices like night vision goggles. Naturally, the so-called Magus killer, Emiya Giritsugu, would not let this excellent opportunity slip by. Swiftly, he attached a suppressor to his sniper rifle and adjusted his aim. There had to be thousands of Magus who had perished at his hands for underestimating modern technology and failing to understand the changes in the times, and this one would be next. Bullet. Bloom for you. Bang. The bullet tore through the air with a thunderous sound, bursting forth with a blazing spark as the origin bullet shot out mercilessly. After completing all this, Emiya Giritsugu seemed to have predicted the master's fate. The origin bullet was the deadly nemesis of Magus. As long as they were hit by this bullet, even if the Magus didn't die immediately, they would instinctively use healing magecraft. However, the outcome of using healing magecraft after being hit by an origin bullet would be veins bursting. With that, the Lancer group would be resolved. Humphrey, did you really fall for such a simple trap? You despicable Magus. However, after the bullet was fired, Emiya Giritsugu heard not the scream he had anticipated. A cold, proud male voice suddenly reached his ears from behind, sending a chill down his spine because the voice didn't come from in front of him, but rather from behind. In the reflection on the night vision device, the figure struck by the bullet exploded, coalescing like liquid before transforming into a sword that flew toward Emiya Giritsugu. Clearly, that Mercury had traced the bullet's trajectory to locate his position. Time alter, double XL. In the face of life and death, Emiya Giritsugu showed no hesitation. As the Mercury arrows shot toward him, he activated his time alter and leaped down from several meters high on the container without a second thought. Ugh! Falling from the container, Emiya Giritsugu found himself in a bit of a predicament, clutching his injured arm as he limped along, looking up. Before him stood a container riddled with dozens of large holes, the Mercury arrows having arrived in mere seconds and turned the container beneath him into Swiss cheese. If he had hesitated for even a moment, he would have been finished. He had been deceived. The figure he saw was merely a decoy. Feeling a chill in his heart from this heavy blow, Emiya Giritsugu was about to make a quick escape when a figure blocked his path, causing his heart to sink. Let's see what I've caught. Firearms, time alter magecraft. Let me think, who are you? Oh, you must be Emiya Giritsugu, the so-called Magus killer. The man before him had blonde hair slicked back, hands clasped behind his back, and wore a serious expression filled with disdain as he regarded Emiya Giritsugu. The Magus killer, was it? His name was Emiya Giritsugu, if he recalled correctly. That precise targeting and a sudden sniper attack, though unorthodox, was indeed impressive. If he hadn't been prepared in advance, he would have easily fallen for the trap. Even though Magus had protective magecraft, avoiding death from such a rapid bullet to the head would be nearly impossible. However, something about that bullet seemed off. What is this? Kenneth exhaled sharply, and the mercury mixed with the origin bullet shot by Emiya returned to his hand. He narrowed his eyes and began to use detection magecraft to analyze the bullet, gradually completing a preliminary analysis. I see, so this is the secret of the Magus killer? The mercury gathered in his palm, constantly swirling. With a flick of his hand, he thoroughly analyzed the exaggerated bullet from the inside out. As this process unfolded, Kenneth's expression grew increasingly grim. I suddenly understand why you can kill so many Magus. I admit it's not just luck, but you're done for now. The more he learned about the bullet's true nature, the more he felt a sense of narrow escape, and his anger toward Emiya grew. This despicable Magus had actually created such a malicious weapon, and the existence of this weapon held no significance whatsoever. It couldn't be considered a form of research or a branch of knowledge, it was simply a tool born for the purpose of slaughtering Magus. No wonder Emiya assassination success rate was so high, and the intelligence around his assassinations was so mysterious. If the magical community discovered he had created a weapon like the origin bullet, he would undoubtedly be attacked by the entire community of mystics. No Magus, not even himself, could tolerate the existence of such a weapon. Seeing such a weapon, Kenneth couldn't help but feel a surge of anger, recalling that if he hadn't been on guard and well prepared, the consequences of being struck by such a thing would send a chill down his spine. In this Holy Grail war, Emiya was undoubtedly a tremendous threat. If he was even slightly careless, he could very well fall into this guy's hands. He even suspected that in some alternate timeline, he might have been killed by this man. However, he could not let this man live since he had discovered this now. A fierce glint flashed in his eyes. Not only are your methods despicable, but you've also created something so contrary to the principles of magecraft. Emiya, you're quite bold. Are you ready to face the wrath of all Magus? You Magus killer. As Kenneth approached slowly, Emiya widened his eyes. Chapter 18 Entrance under the moonlight. In the steel jungle, the clash between the holy sword and the magical spear gradually intensified, with escalating magical energy making the battle more fierce. In the port, close to the ocean, Fion, empowered by the boundless power of water, raised his spear high as if he were the sea god from myth, commanding the ocean waves to sweep toward Sartoria. Just moments ago, his master had contacted him through the familiar, informing him that they had gained absolute advantage. Saber's master would soon be dealt with, but to prevent Saber from rushing over to aid, he needed to hold back this King Arthur with all his might, so he could fight with full strength without hiding his abilities. In response, Fion unleashed his full power, shifting the previously evenly matched situation into a crushing dominance, making Artoria realize why Lancer had chosen the port for battle. Concealment was one reason, but clearly, the home field advantage brought by the endless power of water was the key. In such a place, even she could not compete with Lancer in this state. Invisible air. With an increase in magical output, Saber unleashed the invisible air, tearing apart the incoming waves. The fierce winds temporarily halted the tide, and seizing this moment, she shouted towards her behind. Get out of here, Iris Veil. But, Saber. Run. Don't worry about me, leave this place immediately. Seeing Artoria's serious expression, Iris Veil nodded, taking advantage of the pause in the giant waves to turn and flee towards the port. Fion merely glanced at them and did not stop them. From the very beginning, he had noticed that these two were not actually master and servant, so there was no real need to strike against that lady. If it weren't for necessity, he wouldn't want to harm a lady at all. Of course. Excluding warriors. Watching Saber gradually surrounded by magical waves, Fion raised his spear, preparing to send this legendary king off. Release the noble phantasm. Whoosh. 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 At that moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and several sharp sounds cut through the air, interrupting his next action. Foo ha 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 ha. A guy who looked like he had a grudge against streetlights and was shinier than a light bulb made his move.